October 1685. The colony clung to the James River like a weary traveller, its palisades weathered by storms and time. Tobacco fields stretched under a bruised sky, their leaves curling in the damp chill. The town was a patchwork of waterland-orb houses, a brick church, and a tavern where planters and indentured servants drowned their fears in ale. 9 years had passed since Bacon's rebellion, when Nathaniel Bacon's men burned Jamestown to ash, raging against Governor Berkeley's rule. The scars remained distrust among neighbors, whispers of treachery, and a forest that seemed to watch. In that haunted autumn, death came not from war or fever, but from flames that carried a vow of vengeance. Gideon Holt was 38, constable of Jamestown, a lean man with a sailor's squint and a limp from a musket ball taken in 76. He'd come to Virginia in 66, fleeing a Bristol jail, and fought for Bacon before swearing loyalty to the crown. His wife, Martha, died of smallpox in 80, leaving him with a daughter, Ruth, 12, and a heart heavy with doubt. On October 4th, Goodman Caleb Finch, a planter, burst into the guardhouse, his face pale as linen. "Dorothy's dead," he gasped. "Burned in the woods." Gideon grabbed his flintlock and followed, boots slogging through mud. The body lay in a clearing 2 miles north, where pines loomed dark. Dorothy Finch, 32, Caleb's sister, was tied to a stake, her body charred, bones gleaming through ash. A circle of soot surrounded her, and words were scrawled in the dirt. Oath kept a charred scrap of parchment, tied to her wrist, bore a seal of flame crossed by a dagger. Gideon's stomach churned. Dorothy was pious, a seamstress who mended militia coats, who'd burn her like a witch. The town's physician, Master John Pott, 60, examined her. "Burned alive," he said, voice low. "No knife, no fire." The seal was unfamiliar, not English. Jamestown stirred with dread. Dorothy was buried in haste, her grave blessed by Reverend James Blair, 30, a stern Scot. The council, led by Captain Edward Hill, 50, a wealthy planter, demanded answers. "Pirates, perhaps," Hill said, "or savages." Gideon doubted it. The parchment was deliberate, the oath a message. He questioned Caleb, who admitted Dorothy had quarreled with widow Agnes Cole, 45, over a stolen cow. "She spat curses," Caleb said. Gideon visited Agnes, her hut reeking of lye. "I wished her ill," Agnes said, "but not death." Her alibi held she'd been at market with witnesses. On October 9th, a second victim was found, near the riverbank. Thomas Ward, 40, a cooper, was lashed to a stake, burned, with oath kept in ash, and the same sealed parchment. Thomas's son, Samuel, said his father had feuded with Henry Locke, a merchant, over a debt. Locke threatened him, Samuel said, trembling. Gideon confronted Locke, a stout man with a gold chain, at his warehouse. "Thomas was a cheat," Locke said, "but I don't kill." His books showed no debt, but Gideon noted his hands, calloused, smelling faintly of pitch. The town locked its shutters. Militia patrolled, fearing Pamunkey raids, but the fires felt personal. Gideon showed the seal to Goody Sarah, 62, a healer who'd nursed rebels in 76. "Old French," she said, squinting, "means vow of fire, used by who?" Maybe she spoke of Bacon's rebellion. Some settlers betrayed comrades, selling them to Berkeley for pardons. Dorothy's father turned traitor, Sarah said. Thomas's, too. Gideon's blood ran cold. He'd fought with Bacon, spared by swearing allegiance. Was he a target? He dug into the rebellion. Records, kept in Hill's manor, showed betrayals. Dorothy's father, Thomas's uncle, and Locke's brother informed on Bacon's men gaining land. A Huguenot, Pierre Dubois, 25 in 76, lost his family when betrayed. Pierre vanished after the rebellion, presumed dead. Was he back, burning the guilty? The parchment seals, singed but fine, hinted at French craft. Gideon checked the docks, finding a trader, Willem Vane, who'd sold such parchment in 80. A man bought a ream, Vane said. Quiet, scarred, limping. October 15th brought a third death. Mary Locke, 34, Henry's sister, a midwife, found in a cedar grove, burned. With the oath and seal. Mary had tended wounded rebels, but her father was a turncoat. Her husband, John, said she'd seen a stranger near their barn. He carried a torch, John said. Gideon searched the grove, finding a flint striker, its handle carved with a flame. He questioned Locke again, who sweated. I saw no one, Locke said, but his pitch-stained coat betrayed him. Jamestown teetered. Blair preached against God's judgment, but Gideon saw greed, not divine wrath. He staked out the woods, flintlock primed, rain soaking his cloak. On October 20th, tracks led to a marsh cave. Inside, a fire glowed, with stakes, parchment, and a list. Finch, Ward, Locke, Hill. A figure emerged, scarred, limping, in a tattered coat. Pierre, Gideon said, musket raised. Pierre's dead, the man said. I'm Jacques Dubois, 34. Pierre's brother had survived the betrayal, hiding with trappers. Your town sold my kin, he said, torch flaring. Finch, Ward, Locke, they profited from blood. Jock's seals, his mother's, marked the oath he swore at Pierre's grave. Hill was next, his father the chief traitor. Gideon's voice was firm. It ends here. Jacques raised his torch. Gideon fired, the shot echoing. Jacques fell, blood mixing with ash. Gideon found Hill at his manor, confessing his father's treachery. I was a boy, Hill said, shaking. I didn't know. Jacques' list named Gideon, too, for his oath to the crown. Gideon burned it, weary of vengeance. Jamestown buried the truth, blaming raiders. Jacques' body sank in the river, his seals destroyed. Gideon stayed constable, but the marshes whispered. At night, settlers swore they saw flames flicker and heard oaths in the wind. The shadow of the sloop. Charleston, South Carolina, August 1705. The port was a fevered pulse, its wharves thick with the creak of sloops and the stench of tar. Ships from London and Barbados unloaded rum and slaves, while pirates lurked offshore. Palmetto trees swayed, and the Ashley River carried whispers of wealth and betrayal. In that sultry summer, a killer haunted the docks, leaving sailors drowned in their bunks, their mouths filled with sand. A shadow cast by a cursed sloop. Thomas Drayton was 40, harbour master, a broad man with a sailor's squint. He'd sailed, with privateers dodging Spanish cannons, before settling in Charleston. On August 7th, Captain William Rhett, 38, a militia leader, summoned him to a tavern. Jonas Pike's dead, Rhett said, found in his ship. Drayton followed to the docks, heart heavy. Jonas Pike, 33, a sailor, lay in his bunk on the Asterisk Swift. Gull Asterisk, mouth stuffed with sand, hands bound with knotted rope. A note on his chest read, "The sloop remembers." Drayton's breath caught. Jonas was honest, a father of 2. Coroner John Moore, 50, ruled drowning. but no water was near. The sands from the harbour, Moore said. Strange. Charleston stirred with fear. Jonas was buried, Reverend Francis Lejeau, 40, praying over him. The council, led by Governor Nathaniel Johnson, 51, demanded answers. Pirates, Johnson said. Drayton doubted it. The note was too deliberate. He questioned Jonas's mate, who said he'd argued with Henry Gibbs, a merchant, over cargo. Gibbs cursed him, the mate said. Drayton visited Gibbs, a lean man with a gold chain, at his warehouse. Jonas was a thief, Gibbs said, but I don't kill. His alibi held trading with planters. August 12th brought a second death on the Blue Tern. Margaret Cole, 29, a sailor's wife who mended nets, was found, sand in her mouth, rope-bound. Note reading, the sloop remembers. Her husband Peter said she'd quarrelled with Edward Vane, a dockhand, over wages. Vane threatened her, Peter said. Drayton confronted Vane, a wiry man with a scarred lip, at the docks. Margaret lied, Vane said, but I'm no murderer. His log showed him working, but Drayton saw sand on his boots. The city locked its ships. The Gazette warned of a dock killer. Drayton showed the note to Goody Esther, 60, a tavern keeper. That phrase is old, she said. From a 1695 wreck, the Black Sloop. It sank off Folly Beach, crew betrayed by Charleston merchants for gold. Jonas's father, Margaret's uncle, Gibbs's brother, they profited, Esther said. A boy, Simon, swore revenge. Simon vanished in 96. August 18th saw a third death. Samuel Vane, 35, Edward's brother, a sailor, found on the Starling, sand and note. Samuel had crewed the Black Sloop. His wife Anne said he'd seen a stranger near the docks. He carried a rope, she said. Drayton found a knotted cord, bloodied, in the hold. He questioned Edward again, who paled. I saw no one, he said, hands shaking. Charleston teetered. Lejeau preached of God's wrath, but Drayton saw betrayal. He staked out the docks, pistol primed, rain falling. On August 23rd, tracks led to a derelict sloop. Inside, a lantern glowed, with ropes, sand, and a list: Pike, Cole, Vane, Johnson. A figure moved, scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. Simon, Drayton said. Simon's dead, he said. I'm Paul Reed, 32, Simon's brother, had survived, working as a smuggler. Your city betrayed us, he said, rope in hand. Pike, Cole, Vane, they stole our gold. Paul's sand from the wreck marked his oath. Johnson was next, his father, the traitor. Drayton drew his pistol. No more. Paul lunged. Drayton fired, the shot echoing. Paul fell, blood pooling. Drayton found Johnson, confessing his father's greed. I was young, he said. Paul's list named Drayton for guarding the wreck. Drayton burned it, weary of death. Charleston hushed the truth, blaming pirates. Paul's body sank in the river, his ropes burned. Drayton stayed harbour master, but the docks whispered. At night, sailors swore they heard waves crash and saw sand spill where the sloop's shadow lay. The lanterns lament, Williamsburg, Virginia, November 1685. The town was a raw capital, its dirt streets lined with grand houses for planters and shacks for the poor. Tobacco smoke hung heavy, and the James River murmured secrets. Rebellion, 9 years past, had left scars, distrust, burned barns, and whispers of betrayal. In that cold autumn, a killer stalked the night. leaving lanterns to light the way to death. Caleb Thorne was 30, a watchman, once an indentured servant, who'd earned his freedom. His hands bore whip scars, his eyes a quiet rage. On November 4th, Goodman Daniel Ward burst into the guardhouse, trembling. "Ruth's dead," he said. In the alley, Caleb grabbed his lantern, pulse racing, and followed through the rain. Ruth, Ward, 27, Daniel's sister, lay in an alley off Duke of Gloucester Street, throat slit. A brass lantern burning beside her, its glass etched with a spiral. A note on her chest read, "The debt burns." Caleb's breath caught. Ruth was a maid, gentle and devout. Coroner John Page, 50, ruled death by a single cut, the lantern old, from a ship. "It's deliberate," he said. Williamsburg stirred. With fear, Ruth was buried. Reverend Robert Hunt, 40, praying over her. The council, led by Captain Francis Nicholson, 45, demanded answers. "Vagrants," Nicholson said. Caleb doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned Daniel, who said Ruth had argued with widow Sarah Pike, 42, over a stolen ring. "She cursed us," Daniel said. Caleb visited Sarah, her hut smelling of wax. "I wished her no harm," Sarah said, eyes steady. Her alibi held. With neighbors, November 9th brought a second death near the Bruton Parish Church. Thomas Gray, 39, a carpenter, lay with throat cut, lantern etched, note reading "The debt burns." His wife Mary said he'd quarreled with Edward Cole, a planter, over wages. Cole threatened him, Mary said. Caleb confronted Cole, a tall man with a silver buckle, at his estate. "Thomas lied," Cole said, "but I don't kill." His books showed payment, but Caleb saw ash on his boots. The town barred its gates. The Virginia Gazette warned of a lantern killer. Caleb showed the note to Goody Martha, 55, a healer. "That phrase is old," she said, "from a 1676 land deal during the rebellion. Planters, including Ruth's father, Thomas's uncle, and Cole's brother, stole acres from a servant, John Wells. His son, Simon, swore revenge," Martha said. "He's gone." November 15th saw a third death. Elizabeth Cole, 32, Edward's sister, a weaver, found in a stable lantern and note. Elizabeth had worked for the deal's overseer. Her husband, James, said she'd seen a stranger near there. Field, he carried a lantern, James said. Caleb found a knife, etched with a spiral, in the straw. He questioned Cole again, who paled. "I saw no one," he said, hands trembling. Williamsburg teetered. Hunt preached of God's judgment. But Caleb saw greed. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. On November 20th, tracks led to a barn. Inside, a lantern glowed, with knives, notes, and a list: Ward, Gray, Cole, Nicholson. A figure moved, scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. "Simon, Caleb," said. "Simon's dead," he said. "I'm Jonah." Jonah Wells, 30, had survived, working as a laborer. "Your town stole our land," he said, knife in hand. Ward, Gray, cold, they profited. Jonah's lanterns, from a wrecked ship, marked his oath. Nicholson was next, his father the thief. Caleb drew his pistol. No more. Jonah lunged. Caleb fired, the shot echoing. Jonah fell, blood pooling. Caleb found Nicholson, confessing his father's fraud. "I was young," he said. Jonah's list named Caleb for serving the planters. Caleb burned it, weary of death. Williamsburg hushed the truth, blaming vagrants. Jonah's body sank in the river, his lanterns smashed. Caleb stayed watchman, but the alleys whispered. At night, townsfolk swore they saw lanterns glow, and heard knives scrape where the debt burned. The hollows toll. Albany, New York, October 1715. The town was a frontier crossroads, its Dutch gables and English taverns pressed against the Hudson River. Fur traders and Iroquois mingled, but tensions simmered, land disputes, trade wars, and whispers of rebellion. In that crisp autumn, a killer struck, leaving bodies hollowed out in the woods. A toll for sins long buried. Peter Van Buren was 35, constable, a Dutchman with a trader's cunning and a soldier's scars. He'd fought in Queen Anne's War, losing a brother to Iroquois arrows. On October 6th, trader Hans Vroom burst into the fort, trembling. "Dirk's dead," he said. In the forest, Peter grabbed his musket, heart racing, and followed. Through the mist, Dirk Vroom, 32, Hans's brother, lay in a clearing, chest hollowed, filled with sage and yarrow. A note on his coat read, "The hollow pays." A bone bead, Iroquois style, hung from his wrist. Peter's breath caught. Dirk was honest, a fur dealer. Coroner Jacobus, swart 50, ruled death by gutting the herbs deliberate. "It's a ritual," he said. Albany stirred with fear. Dirk was buried, Reverend Bernardus Freeman, 45, praying over him. The council, led by Captain Robert Livingston, 51, demanded answers. "Iroquois," Livingston said. Peter doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned Hans, who said Dirk had argued with Willem Kuyper, a trader, over furs. Kuyper cursed him, Hans said. Peter visited Kuyper, a stout man with a fur cap, at his post. "Dirk was a thief," Kuyper said, "but I don't kill." His alibi held trading with Mohawks. October 11th brought a second death, near the Mohawk River. Anna Schuyler, 29, a merchant's wife, was found, chest hollowed, herbs stuffed. Note: reading the hollow pays. Her husband David said she'd quarreled with John Beekman, a landowner, over a debt. Beekman threatened her, David said. Peter confronted Beekman, a lean man with a gold watch, at his estate. "Anna lied," Beekman said, "but I'm no murderer." His books cleared him, but Peter saw sage in his yard. The town barred its gates. The Albany Gazette warned of a hollow killer. Peter showed the note to Goody Lisbeth, 60 Anne. "Iroquois healer. That phrase is old," she said. "From a 1700 trade deal. Traders, including Dirk's father, Anna's uncle, and Beekman's brother, cheated an Iroquois clan, the Wolf Clan. Their son Tawas swore revenge," Lisbeth said. "He's gone." October 17th saw a third death. Peter Beekman, 34, John's brother, a trader, found in a pine grove, hollowed, note, and bead. Peter had traded in. His wife Sarah, said he'd seen a stranger near their barn. He carried a knife, she said. Peter found a bone knife, bloodied, in the grove. He questioned John again, who paled. "I saw no one," he said, hands trembling. Albany teetered. Freeman preached of heathen wrath, but Peter saw greed. He staked out the woods, musket primed, rain falling. On October 22nd, tracks led to a cave. Inside, a fire glowed with knives, herbs, and a list. Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman, Livingston. A figure moved, scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. Peter said, "Tuas is dead," he said. "I'm Caron." Caron Wolfe, 32, had survived, living as a trapper. Your town stole our trade, he said, knife in hand. Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman, they profited. Karen's herbs, from his clan, marked his oath. Livingston was next, his father the thief. Peter drew his musket. No more, Karen lunged. Peter fired, the shot echoing. Karen fell, blood pooling. Peter found Livingston, confessing his father's fraud. I was young, he said. Karen's list named Peter for trading with cheats. Peter burned it, weary of death. Albany hushed the truth, blaming savages. Karen's body sank in the Hudson, his beads buried. Peter stayed constable, but the woods whispered. At night, traders swore they heard knives scrape, and saw herbs drift where the hollow's toll was paid. The wraiths tithe, Salem Village, Massachusetts, October 1698. The air was sharp, heavy with the scent of damp earth and dying leaves. Salem Village sprawled across rocky fields, its timber houses hunched against the wind. 6 years had passed since the witch trials tore the community apart. 20 hanged, others crushed or jailed, all on whispers of Satan's work. The scars lingered. Neighbors distrusted neighbors, and the forest beyond the pastures was a place of dread, where wolves howled and shadows moved. In that haunted autumn, death came not from gallows but from a blade, carving a bloody reckoning in the wilderness. Jeremiah Ward was 34, constable of Salem Village, a tall man with a soldier's frame and eyes that saw too much. He'd fought in King Philip's War, seen men gutted by Narragansett arrows, and returned to a village mad with fear. The trials sickened him girls' visions, sending good folk to die. Now he kept order, settling disputes over pigs or fences, his musket rarely fired. On October 6th, Goodman Thomas Proctor, a farmer, rode to Jeremiah's door, face pale. Abigail's dead, he said, in the woods. God help us. Jeremiah followed Proctor to a clearing 2 miles north, where oaks loomed like sentinels. Abigail Proctor, 27, Thomas's sister, lay on her back, skirts soaked with dew. Her throat was slashed, a clean cut from ear to ear, blood blackening the soil. Around her, a circle of wheat stalks and animal bones, rabbit, fox, deer formed a crude ring. On her chest, carved into the flesh, was a symbol, a crescent pierced by a line, like a broken moon. A hemp sack lay nearby, spilling grain. Jeremiah's breath caught. This was no wolf, no accident. The village buzzed with fear. Abigail, a quiet spinster, wove cloth and prayed at Reverend Parris's meeting house, who'd kill her so cruelly. Jeremiah sent for Goody Hannah Corey, 62, a healer hood. Survived the trial's accusations. Hannah studied the symbol, her hands trembling. Not Christian, she whispered. Old, maybe Indian or worse. She spoke of wraiths, spirits of the wronged, but Jeremiah dismissed it. He'd seen evil in men, not ghosts. Still, the bones and grain felt like an offering, a ritual. On October 10th, a second body was found, a mile east. Samuel Flint, 41, a tanner, hung from a maple, rope biting his neck. His throat was cut, the same crescent carved on his chest. Another circle of bones and wheat surrounded him, a sack of barley at his feet. Samuel's wife, Mary, wept, saying he'd quarreled with John Willard, a neighbor, over land. Samuel swore John cheated him, she said. Jeremiah questioned Willard, a stout farmer with a quick temper. I was home, Willard said, glaring. His wife Margaret nodded, but her eyes darted. Salem Village was small, 600 souls, bound by faith and fear. The trials had left it brittle families. Like the Putnams and Porters still feuded, blaming each other for the hangings. Abigail's brother Thomas was a Putnam ally. Samuel had sided with the Porters. Was this revenge? Jeremiah walked the village, noting grudges. At the meeting house, Reverend Paris, 45, gaunt and nervous, preached against Satan's return. "We must root out sin," he said, eyeing Jeremiah, who'd stopped praying after the war. Paris had accused witches in 92. Did he know? Something now. Jeremiah examined the symbols. He visited Widow Osborne, 70, a trial survivor shunned by most. Her hut smelled of herbs and tallow. "That marks no devil's sign," she said, squinting at his sketch. "It's older, from the old country, means tithe, payment for wrong." She spoke of a 1688 land deal before the trials. When settlers cheated a Wampanoag family, the Tantaquidgeons, out of forest acres. One son, Elisha, 18, swore vengeance, then vanished. "Some say he's still out there," Osborne said, watching. The killings stirred panic. Farmers barred their doors. Militia patrolled the woods. Jeremiah and Deputy Caleb Holt, a jittery lad of 20, searched the clearings, finding a knife near Samuel's tree, its blade nicked but clean. No print, no blood, just a bone bead tied to the hilt, Wampanoag style. Jeremiah's mind turned to Elisha, Tantaquidgeon, now 28, if alive. He questioned Thomas Proctor, who admitted his father helped seize the Tantaquidgeon land. They were heathens, Thomas said, defiant. Samuel's father, too, was involved, per old deeds. On October 16th, a third victim, Mercy Dane, 19, a maidservant, found in a ravine. Throat cut, crescent carved, bones and rye in a circle. Mercy worked for John Willard, who'd argued with Samuel. Her mother, Goody Dane, screamed of curses. Mercy saw someone in the woods, she said. A man, cloaked. Jeremiah pressed Willard again, finding him splitting wood, sweat on his brow. "I'm no killer," Willard said, but his axe matched the knife's nicks. Margaret, his wife, was gone fled, neighbors said, to IPSWICH. The village teetered. Paris held a fast, praying for deliverance, but Jeremiah saw guilt in every face. He dug into the 1688 deal. Records showed 3 families, Proctor, Flint, Willard, gained from the Tantaquidgeon theft, backed by magistrate John Hathorne, a trials judge. Hathorne, now 57, lived in Salem town, rich and untouchable. Jeremiah rode to confront him, musket slung. Hathorne, cold and grey, denied wrongdoing. "Savages have no claim," he said. But his hand shook, and Jeremiah saw fear. On October 21st, a boy found a 4th body. Jacob Corey, 38, Hannah's son, a blacksmith, hanging in a pine grove. Same cut, same mark, same circle. Jacob had testified against witches in 92, dooming Goody, Corey's sister. Was this the trial's echo? Jeremiah searched Jacob's forge, finding a map, crudely drawn, marking the murder sites. They formed a crescent, pointing to a hill called Gallows Ridge, where witches were hanged. A note scrawled, "The tithe ends." Jeremiah's sleep was plagued by dreams of ropes and blood. His wife, Sarah, died in 95, fever claiming her, leaving him alone. He'd doubted God since, but the killings felt like judgment. He staked out Gallows Ridge, flintlock primed, rain soaking his cloak. On October 25th, he heard a chant, low and guttural, from a cave. Inside, a fire burned, casting shadows. A man knelt, cloaked, carving a bone. Around him, sacks of grain, skulls of deer, and a fifth rope, coiled. Elisha, Jeremiah said, musket raised. The man turned, face scarred, eyes hollow. Not Elisha, he said. Micah. Micah Tantaquijan, Elisha's brother, 30, had lived in the woods, raised by a trapper after the theft. Your village took our land, Micah said, knife gleaming. Then your trials killed my kin Elisha, accused, hanged in 92. Tithe was for them, targeting the thieves, heirs, Abigail, Samuel, Mercy, Jacob. The fifth rope was for Willard, the last heir, hiding in town. Jeremiah's voice was steady. No more blood. Micah lunged, knife flashing. Jeremiah fired, the shot deafening in the cave. Micah fell, blood pooling, his hand clutching a bone bead. Jeremiah found Willard at the tavern, drunk, confessing his father's role in 88. I knew he'd come, Willard sobbed. Micah's cave held journals detailing the murders, the symbols his mother's taught before she starved. Salem buried the dead, the truth buried deeper. Hathon paid the militia to hush it, blaming savages. Jeremiah burned the journals, sick of lies. He stayed constable, but the woods felt alive, whispering. Villagers swore they saw lanterns on Gallows Ridge, and heard chants where the wraith's tithe was paid. Charlestown, South Carolina, September 1712. The port hummed with life, its wharves thick with the creak of ships and the shouts of stevedores. Sails snapped in the humid breeze off the Cooper River, carrying rice, indigo, and whispers of wealth. Palmetto trees lined Broad Street, where merchants in silk waistcoats bartered beside enslaved Africans in chains. Yellow fever stalked the alleys, and pirates like Blackbeard were but a tide away. Charlestown was a jewel, but flawed its luster, built on blood and secrets. 6 years prior, a French and Spanish fleet had raided, burning homes and sowing fear. In that sweltering autumn, an older wound festered, and death came cloaked in ashdot. Elias Thorne was 32, clerk to Magistrate William Rhett, a lean man with ink-stained hands and a soldier's scars. He'd sailed from Bristol in 1700, fleeing a duel, and served in the 1706 defence, musket in hand. The raid haunted him friends dead, his courage faltering. Now he recorded deeds and trials, his quill scratching late into the night. On September 7th, Magistrate Rhett, a stern man with a powdered wig, summoned him to the watch-house. A merchant's dead, Rhett said, tossing a report. Henry Voss, 44, found in the marshes foul work. Elias rode a nag to the Ashley River marshes, where reeds swayed and mosquitoes wind. Henry Voss, a rice trader with a fine brick. House lay on a sandbar, his body charred black, wrapped in a linen shroud streaked with ash. A sigil was burned into his chest, a circle split by a jagged line, like a shattered sun. No wood, no coal, just Voss, burned as if by hellfire. Hemp cord round his neck held a blackened pearl. Elias gagged at the stench. Captain John Fenwick, militia leader, stood nearby, sweating in his red coat. Pirates, maybe, Fenwick said. Or savages. Elias doubted it. The shroud was deliberate, the sigil precise. Charlestown stirred uneasily. Voss was known. A deacon at St. Philip's Church, generous but sharp in trade. Elias questioned his widow, Margaret, 39. In their parlor, its mahogany heavy with polish. Henry had rivals, she said, dabbing her eyes. James Cutler, the shipwright, hated him. Cutler, 47, had lost a contract to Voss in 10. Elias found Cutler at the docks, hammering a keel, his beard flecked with sawdust. Voss was a snake, Cutler said, but I didn't kill him. His alibi held cards at the tavern till dawn. On September 12th, a second body appeared in a cypress grove west of town. Sarah Pym, 36, a tavern keeper, was burned and shrouded, the same sigil on her skin, a pearl at her throat. Sarah's alehouse, the Gilded Anchor, served sailors and planters. Her brother, Tom, said she'd argued with Fenwick over unpaid debts. He threatened her, Tom said, fists clenched. Ilias confronted Fenwick at the militia barracks, saber gleaming on his desk. I paid my tab, Fenwick snapped. Find a real killer. Elias noted Fenwick's boots, caked with marsh mud. The town panicked. The Charlestown Gazette printed a vague notice. Tragic deaths, but whispers of witchcraft spread. The 1706 raid had left fears of papist plots. Now, some saw Satan's hand. Elias, no churchgoer, sought Goody Ruth, 65, an herbalist who'd nursed raid survivors. Her hut smelled of sage and tar. That sigil's no devil's mark, she said, peering at Elias's sketch. It's French, from the Achaians, means oath broken. She spoke of the raid. Charlestown's militia repelled the French, but some settlers betrayed others, selling secrets for gold. Voss's father was one, Ruth said. Sarah's too. Elias dug into the raid. Records, brittle and faded, listed militia rolls and losses. Voss's father, a merchant, profited. Post-raid, buying burned land cheap. Sarah's father, a cooper, did the same. Both were rumored to have parleyed with the French, trading maps for coin. Elias wondered if the killer was a raid survivor, settling scores. The pearls, scorched but fine, pointed to the sea. He checked. The harbour master's log ships from Acadia, 1706, carried such pearls. A pawn shop on Bay Street had bought 3, sold by a sailor, Isaac Leckler, 40, who'd vanished. September 18th brought a third victim, Nathaniel Boone, 50, a planter, found in a swamp near the Wando River. Burned, shrouded, sigil carved, pearl corded. Boone owned slaves, his rice fields, vast. His overseer, Silas, said Boone feared a man named Paul Renaud, a French Huguenot who'd lost kin in the raid. Boone called him mad, Silas said. Elias tracked Renaud to a shack by the docks, its walls hung with nets. Renaud, gaunt with feverish eyes, admitted hating Boone. He sold my sister to the French, he said. But Renaud's hands were clean, his shoes dry. The town locked its gates. Militia patrolled, planters hired guards. Rhett pressed Elias. End this, or I'll send for governor's men. Elias staked out the marshes, flintlock primed, rain dripping from his tricorn. He found a burned patch, no body, but a shroud, half sewn, and a pearl, dropped. Nearby a knife, its blade etched with 1706. The killer was near. Ilias questioned Fenwick again, noting his raid roll lieutenant, accused of abandoning posts. Fenwick's father, a councilman, had gained land after '06, like Voss and Boone. On September 24th, a fourth body, Mary Cutler, 43, James's sister, a seamstress, found in a mangrove thicket. Same ritual, same pearl. Mary had sewn for militia wives in '06. Her father too, profited from betrayal. Elise's leads pointed to Leclerc the sailor. He searched the docks, finding Leclerc's sloop, its hold stinking of pitch. Inside, a journal. They sold us. To die, Voss, Pym, Boone, Cutler, Fenwick. The ash is their due. Leclerc, a rayed orphan, had watched his family burn, betrayed by Charlestown's greedy. The sigil was his mother's, an Acadian oath of vengeance. Elias rode to Leclerc's hideout, a marsh island, September 27th. Lanterns glowed, shrouds hung like ghosts. Leclerc knelt, torch in hand, Fenwick bound before him. "He's last," Leclerc said, voice hollow. "His father doomed mine." Elias raised his pistol. "Enough." Leclerc tossed the torch. Flames leaped. Elias fired, hitting Leclerc's shoulder. He dragged Fenwick out, Leclerc vanishing into the blaze. The island burned, shrouds curling to ash. Charlestown hushed the case. Fenwick, shamed, resigned. Leclerc's body was never found, his sloop gone. Elias quit, sailing north, haunted by the sigil's glow. The marshes stayed silent, but sailors swore they saw fires flicker and heard shrouds flap where the ash settled. Providence, Rhode Island, November 1675. The town was a stubborn outpost, its logged houses and muddy lanes carved from wilderness. The Seekonk River glinted under a grey sky, while forests of oak and pine stretched endless, hiding wolves and whispers of war. King Philip's War had begun months prior, pitting English settlers against the Wampanoag and Narragansett, whose raids left farms in ashes. Providence, founded by outcasts like Roger Williams, was a haven for dissenters. But fear now ruled, fear of tomahawks, of God's wrath, of neighbors' greed. In that bitter season, a darker terror struck, ringing death through the trees with the toll of a bell. Amos Reddick was 36, constable of Providence, a broad man with sea-weathered hands and a limp from a shipwreck off Barbados. He'd sailed with privateers in his youth, a past he buried when he swore his oath in 70. His wife Abigail died of fever in 73, leaving him solitary, his faith as frayed as his coat. On November 5th, Goodman Josiah Kent, a yeoman, staggered into the meeting house, face ashen. "Mary's gone," he said. "Found her in the woods." Amos grabbed his musket and followed, boots sinking in frost-hardened mud. The body lay in a clearing, a mile west, where the forest thickened. Mary Kent, 29, Josiah's sister, hung from an ash tree, hemp rope biting her neck. Her eyes bulged, her tongue black, but her hands were tied, wrists bound with a brass bell, no bigger than a walnut, etched with runes, a cross within a circle, spiked like thorns. A sack of corn lay at her feet, kernels scattered. Amos cut her down, heart heavy. Mary was kind, a weaver who sang psalms. Who'd do this? The town surgeon, Master Hugh Cole, 50, examined her. "Strangled," he said. "Hanged alive." The bell's foreign, maybe Dutch or Norse. Providence trembled. Mary was buried swiftly, her grave unmarked to deter grave robbers. The town council, led by Elder Thomas Oney, 43, a pious miller, urged calm, but whispers of Satan spread. Amos, no believer in devils, saw method in the murder rope knotted tight, runes carved with care. He questioned Josiah, who admitted Mary had feuded with Rebecca Thorne, a widow, over a pasture. "She cursed us," Josiah said, crossing himself. Amos visited Rebecca, 55, her hut smoky with tallow. I wished Mary no harm, she said, eyes sharp, her alibi held tending a sick cow with neighbors. On November 10th, a second victim was found near the Patuxent River. Samuel Gorton, 38, a tanner and councilman, dangled from a cedar. Same rope, same bell, same runes. Corn spilled from a sack, muddy and trampled. Samuel's wife, Elizabeth, said he'd argued with Caleb Weaver, a trader, over debts. Caleb swore he'd ruin us. She wept. Amos confronted Weaver, a wiry man with a Dutch accent, at his warehouse. Samuel owed me £10, Weaver said, smirking. I collect coin, not blood. His ledger backed his story, but Amos noted his boots, caked with river clay. The town bolted its doors. Militia drilled, fearing Narragansett raids, but the bells felt closer, personal. Amos sketched the runes, showing them to Goody Patience, 60, a midwife who'd sailed from Amsterdam. Old Saxon, she said, voice low, means debt paid, used by traders long ago. She spoke of a 1663 land deal, when Providence seized Narragansett acres, cheating a sachem, Canonicus's kin. 3 families, Kent, Gorton, Weaver gained most, their deeds signed by Oni's father. The sachem's son, Tobias, swore revenge. Patience said, he's out there in the woods. Amos dug into the deal. Town records, kept in Oni's mill, showed the land grab. 500 acres, traded for beads and axes. The Narragansett misled. Tobias, then 20, vanished after 64, presumed dead in a skirmish. Mary's father, Samuel's uncle, and Weaver's cousin were sick. Was Tobias the killer, striking their heirs? The bells, brass and heavy, hinted at trade goods from Dutch ships. Amos checked the docks, finding a merchant, Peter Vroom, who'd sold such bells in 70. A man bought 3, Vroom said. Tall, scarred, spoke little. No name, no trace. November 16th brought a third death. Lydia Hale, 25, a dairymaid, found in a pine grove. Hanged, bell-bound, runes etched, corn scattered. Lydia worked for Weaver, who'd courted her, rebuffed. Her mother, Goody Hale, said Lydia feared a stranger watching her. He hummed, like a hymn, she said. Amos searched the grove, finding a flint knife, its handle wrapped in deer hide, Narragansett style. He questioned Weaver again, who paled. I saw a man, Weaver said, near my barn. Thought he was a thief. Amos pressed, but Weaver's fear seemed real. Providence teetered on chaos. Olney preached in the meeting house, blaming heathen wretches, but Amos saw greed, not war, at the root. He staked out the woods, musket primed, rain stinging his face. On November 20th, he found tracks near the grove, leading to a cave. Inside, a fire flickered, illuminating bells, ropes, and a map, marking murder sites in a circle around Providence. A figure moved tall, scarred, in a deerskin cloak. Tobias, Amos said, voice steady. The man turned. Not Tobias, he said. Nathaniel Canonicus, 32, Tobias's brother, had lived among trappers after the theft. Your town stole our birthright, he said, knife gleaming. Kent, Gorton, Hale, they profited from lies. Nathaniel's bells, looted from a Dutch wreck, were his father's, rung to seal the deal. He killed to honor Tobias, hanged by settlers in 65, branded a thief. One more, Nathaniel said, naming Olney, whose father drafted the deed. Amos raised his musket. No more, Nathaniel charged, knife flashing. Amos fired, the shot echoing. Nathaniel fell, blood-soaking. The cave floor, a bell rolling from his hand. Amos found Olney at the mill, confessing his father's fraud. I knew, Olney said, head bowed. Thought it buried. Nathaniel's map showed a final site on his farm. Amos burned it, sick of death. Providence hushed the truth, blaming raiders. Nathaniel's body was dumped in the river. His bells melted. Amos stayed constable, but the forest hummed, uneasy. At night, settlers swore they heard bells toll and saw ropes sway where the gallows marked their debt. Cold Spring, Minnesota, February 1942. The winter was brutal, the kind that froze spit before it hit the ground. Snow piled high against the clapboard houses, and the Mississippi River, a mile off, groaned under thick ice. St. Agnes Church stood at the town's center, its steeple piercing the grey sky like a needle. The church was Cold Spring's heartbeat, where farmers, shopkeepers, and mill workers gathered to pray for sons overseas and crops that might survive the frost. Its choir, led by Father Daniel Voss, was renowned, drawing crowds from St. Cloud for Sunday Mass. But on February 17th, that choir became a wound, one that bled secrets the town had buried for decades. It started with a rehearsal. The St. Agnes Choir practiced Tuesdays, 7 p.m., in the church's nave. That night, 23 voices filled the pewsmen in wool coats, women clutching hymnals, breath-fogging in the unheated sanctuary. Father Voss, a wiry man with wire-rimmed glasses, waved his baton, coaxing harmony from Ave Maria. At 8:45, he dismissed them. Most trudged home through the snow, but 3 didn't. Clara Hensel, 19, a seamstress with auburn curls. Martin Lutz, 34, a butcher with a limp from a logging accident. And Agnes Mueller, 62, a widow who baked communion. Wafers? They were last seen locking the church door, their footprints fading into the blizzard. By morning, they were gone. Clara's mother, Frida, knocked on Sheriff Amos Klein's door at dawn, her shawl dusted with snow. She didn't come home. Frida said, voice trembling, "Clara's never late." Amos, a broad man with a face carved by 30 years of Minnesota winters, promised to look. By noon, Martin's wife, Elsie, and Annis's nephew, Carl, reported them missing too. Amos drove his Ford pickup to St. Agnes, boots crunching on the frozen path. The church was empty, hymnals stacked neatly, the air smelling of wax and damp wood. No signs of struggle, no blood, just 3 sets of footprints leading to the road, then nothing. Amos questioned the choir. Nobody saw anything unusual. Father Voss said the trios stayed to tidy up, a routine task. They were devoted, he said, adjusting his glasses. Maybe they got lost in the storm, but Amos doubted it. Clara was sharp, Martin cautious, and Agnes knew every inch of Cold Spring. A search party of 50 men scoured the woods, fields, and riverbanks. They found nothing but deer tracks and frozen sod. The town buzzed with theories. A German spy, a drifter, even wolves. But Amos felt the answer was closer, hidden in the church's shadow. Cold Spring was small, 1,200 souls, mostly German Catholics. Hood settled in the 1850s. Secrets didn't stay buried long, but they festered. Amos, a lapsed Lutheran, wasn't one of them. He'd moved from Minneapolis in '35, after a robbery case left him disillusioned. Cold Spring hired him for his grit, not his faith. Now, at 42, he lived alone above the hardware store, his wife's photo gathering dust. The missing choir members gnawed at him. He returned to St. Agnes, flashlight sweeping the pews. In the sacristy, he found a loose floorboard. Beneath it, a rusted key, etched with 1890. It didn't fit any lock in the church. The key nagged. He visited the town's historian, Widow Brown, 78, who lived in a sagging farmhouse. Her parlour smelled of liniment and old books. That key's from the old orphanage, she said, squinting at it. Burned down in 1910. 30 kids died. The church built over the ruins. Amos's stomach turned. St. Agnes stood on cursed ground. Brown handed him a yellowed ledger, listing the orphans' names. One stood out. Elias Vogel, 12, unaccounted for after the fire. Some say he survived, Brown whispered. A ghost, maybe. Amos dug into the orphanage fire. Newspaper clippings described a blaze that gutted the stone building, run by nuns under Father Heinrich, Voss's predecessor. The cause was unclear lamp oil, they said. Most children suffocated or burned. Elias, a troubled boy, was presumed dead, his body never found. Amos wondered if Elias had escaped, carrying rage into adulthood. But why strike now, 32 years later? And why Clara, Martin, and Agnes? On February 20th, a farmer found Clara's scarf in a ditch 3 miles from town. It was torn, stained with something dark. Amos sent it to St. Cloud's coroner, who confirmed blood, typo Clara's type. The scarf was a taunt, Amos thought, proof the killer was near. He interviewed the choir again, pressing for grudges. A soprano, Lena Fischer, hesitated, then said Martin had argued with Karl Mueller over a loan. Martin called him a leech, she said. Karl, Agnes's nephew, was a gambler, always short on cash. Amos visited Karl's shack, finding him drunk. On schnapps, Karl denied everything, his eyes darting. I loved Aunt Agnes, he slurred. Amos left, unconvinced. That night, a 4th choir member vanished. Otto Brown, 27, a mill worker and Widow Braun's grandson, didn't return from choir. Practice. His coat was found in the churchyard, pockets stuffed within pages. Amos's search turned frantic. The town locked its doors, whispers of a curse spreading. Father Voss held a vigil, his sermons urging faith. But Amos noticed Voss's hands, shook his eyes avoiding the altar. Was he hiding something? The key led Amos to the church basement, a damp maze of storage rooms. Behind a crate, he found a locked trapdoor, the keys match. It opened to a stone tunnel, cold and narrow, smelling. Of earth, Amos's flashlight caught carvings on the walls. Names, dates, pleas for mercy. At the tunnel's end, a chamber, 30 feet wide, with a crude altar of blackened wood. On it, 3 bundles wrapped in burlap. Heart pounding, Amos cut them open. Clara, Martin, and Agnes, their throats slit, eyes staring, their hands clutched. Rosaries placed post-mortem. Otto wasn't there. Amos called in Deputy Paul Haas, a rookie with a nervous stutter. They sealed the chamber, waiting for the coroner. The bodies were fresh, dead within days. The killer had kept them alive, somewhere. Before the ritual, Amos scoured the chamber, finding a child's shoe, charred, from the 1910 fire. Elias Vogel's ghost felt real now. But who was he today? Amos suspected Karl, Voss, even Haas, whose farm bordered the church. Everyone had secrets, the coroner's. Report deepened the mystery. Clara had been starved, Martin beaten, Agnes drugged with laudanum. The killer toyed with them, each death tailored. Amos questioned Voss, who admitted knowing about the tunnel. It was sealed after the fire. Voss said, "For safety." But his voice cracked. Amos pressed, and Voss confessed. The orphanage fire wasn't accidental. Father Heinrich had locked the children in during a storm, punishing disobedience. Elias, defiant, started the blaze to escape, but it raged out of control. Heinrich died. In the fire, his sin buried by the church. Amos tracked Elias's trail. A 1911 census listed an Elias Vogel, 13, in St. Paul, adopted by a tailor. By 1920, he was gone, no record. Amos suspected Elias returned to Cold Spring, hiding in plain sight. Karl Muller's age fit 44, born 1898, but his family swore he was local. Voss, 50, was too old. Haas, 24, too young. Then Amos remembered Otto Braun, missing, 27, whose grandmother knew the orphanage's history. Was Otto Elias's son, continuing his revenge? On February 25th, a boy found Otto's body in the river, wrists bound, throat cut, a note pinned to. His shirt read, "Sins of the Fathers." Amos realized the killer targeted descendants of the 1910 church council who'd covered up the fire. Clara's father, Martin's uncle, Agnes's husband, and Otto's grandfather, all council members. The killer was settling a score. Amos confronted Widow Brown, who broke down. "Elias was my brother," she sobbed. "He survived, changed his name. He's dead now, but his son lives." She named Karl Mueller. Amos arrested Karl, finding a bloody knife in his shack. Karl confessed, voice hollow. "Father told me everything. He said, 'The church let those kids die. I made them pay.' He'd lured the choir members to the tunnel, drugged them, and killed them in the chamber, a shrine to Elias's pain." Karl's fingerprints matched the knife, his boots the ditch where Clara's scarf was found. He'd planned to kill more, but Amos stopped him. Cold Spring buried its dead, the church's secret exposed. Karl hanged himself in jail before trial, leaving a town to grapple with guilt. St. Agnes sealed the tunnel, but whispers of Elias's ghost lingered. Amos retired, haunted by the chamber's altar, wondering if justice ever truly came. Butte, Montana. November 1948. The city clung to the Rockies like a scar, its hills gutted by a century of copper mining. Smoke from the Anaconda companies. Smelters hung low, staining the sky grey. Head frames loomed over clapboard houses, their cables creaking in the wind. Butte was dying slow, its boom days gone, but its people, Irish Serbs, Finns, Italians still toiled in the shafts, chasing veins of ore. The saloons on Main Street roared with laughter and fists, while the mines whispered of collapse. In that bitter autumn, death came not from cave-ins, but from a killer who turned the earth itself into a tomb. Sean Callahan was 39, a detective with the Butte Police Department, his face a map of old boxing scars. He'd grown up in Dublin Gulch, the Irish slum, son of a miner who drank himself to death. Sean fought his way out, gloves up in smoky arenas, until a bad knockout in 36 sent him to the badge. He worked alone, trusted few, and kept a flask of rye in his coat. On November 3rd, Captain Mike Doyle, a barrel-chested Mick with Union ties, called him to the precinct. "Trouble in the hills," Doyle said, tossing a report. "Miners missing." Tommy Shee, 31, last seen at the Granite Mountain shaft. Sean drove his battered Chevy to the mine, wind howling through the pass. The Granite Mountain was a relic, half abandoned, since the 1917 fire that killed 168 men, trapped in a blaze sparked by a foreman's lamp. Tommy Shee, a wiry caulkman, worked the night shift. His foreman, Pat Kelly, said Tommy clocked out at 2 a.m, headed home. "Good lad," Kelly said, spitting tobacco, "no enemies." Sean scoured the shaft's entrance, finding Tommy's lunch pail, dented by a rusted rail. No blood, no tracks, just a chill in the air that wasn't the wind. 2 days later, a prospector found Tommy's body in a disused tunnel, a mile from the main shaft. Sean descended with a carbide lamp, the air damp and sour. Tommy lay on his back, skin grey and taut, like leather stretched over bone. His eyes were gone, pecked by rats, but his hands clutched a copper medallion, etched with a spiral and the word Requiem. Dr. Anna Weiss, the coroner, a German émigré with sharp eyes, examined him. "Dead a week," she said, "suffocated. No wounds, but he was preserved. The mine's cold, dry air mummified him." Sean frowned. Tommy vanished 3 days ago, not 7. Someone held him first. Butte stirred uneasily. The Montana Standard ran a cautious story. Miner found dead, but whispers spread. A ghost. A curse from 17. Sean didn't believe in ghosts, but the medallion gnawed at him. He visited St. Lawrence O'Toole, the Irish church, where Father Liam Keefe, 58, a drinker with a limp, kept Miner's relics. Keefe studied the medallion's photo. "Old Gaelic," he said, "means rest for the dead. Miners wore them, like charms. But this one was new, handcrafted. Someone's. Praying," Keefe said, "or mocking." On November 10th, a second miner vanished. Marko Vukovic, 44, a Serb who worked the Anselmo mine. His wife Jelena said he'd gotten threats union trouble, scabs crossing lines. Sean found Marko's cap in the Anselmo slag heap, blood on the brim. 3 days later, a surveyor found him in another shaft, mummified, clutching a medallion. Same spiral, same word. Anna Weiss confirmed suffocation, but Marko's fingers were broken, as if he'd fought. He was buried alive, she said, pale. Sean's dreams turned to tunnels, walls closing in. The city panicked. Miners struck, refusing to work until the killer was caught. Anaconda bosses hired Pinkertons, who swaggered into Butte with revolvers and sneers. Sean hated them. His father died in a 17 strike, clubbed by company goons. Doyle ordered him to share leads, but they stonewalled him. Sean worked the union angle, visiting the miners' hall, where Joe Clancy, a fiery organizer, raged. "Anacondas killing us slow," he said. "This is their doing." But Joe's eyes flicked when Sean mentioned the medallions. Was he hiding something? Sean's past haunted him. His brother Finn died in the 17 fire, only 14, a nipper fetching tools. Sean, 12, idolized him. Their father Declan blamed the company, swore Finn's ghost walked the shafts. Sean buried that pain, but the medallions felt like Finn's voice, calling from the dark. He dug into the 1917 fire. Records showed Anaconda skimped on safety, ignored warnings. Survivors spoke of a boy, Danny Walsh, 15, who escaped but lost his family. Danny vanished after 18, presumed a runaway. Sean wondered if Danny was the killer, avenging the dead. On November 18th, a third victim, Frank Novak, 36, a Pole, disappeared. From the Neversweet mine, found November 22nd, mummified medallion in hand. Sean searched the tunnel, finding a copper ring, etched with 1917. The killer was counting scenes, Sean thought, tied to the fire. He questioned Novak's crew, learning Frank had a scab during a 47 strike, hated by Union men. Was this revenge? Sean tailed Clancy, who met a man in a grey coat at a speakeasy. The man slipped away, but Sean found a Camel cigarette butt, same brand as at Tommy's site. The case broke open on December 1st. A boy, scavenging scrap, found a hidden shaft, sealed with boards marked Anaconda. Sean pried them loose, descending into a rope ladder. The air was thick, smelling of rot. Inside, a chamber lit by flickering lamps. 3 bodies. Tommy, Marco, Frank, propped like saints, medallions gleaming. A 4th figure moved, a man, 50, gaunt, with a scar across his brow. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, brandishing APICKAXE. Sean drew his .38, heart racing. "Danny Walsh," he said. The man froze, then nodded. "They took my brothers," Danny said. "Burned them. Anaconda, the Union they all knew." He'd survived 17, hid in Chicago, returned to punish the guilty. Tommy's father was a foreman, Marco's a guard, Frank's a scab tied to the fire. Danny kidnapped them, starved them in the chamber, then buried them with medallions. His mother's design? "Finn's with them," Danny said, eyes wild. "Your brother?" Sean's blood ran cold. Finn's death was no accident. Danny blamed Sean's father, a guard who locked the shaft. Danny lunged. Sean fired the shot. Echoing, Danny fell, blood pooling. Sean found Danny's journal detailing the murders, naming a final target. Doyle O'Brien, now an Anaconda executive. A foreman in 17. Sean arrested O'Brien, who confessed to the fire's cover-up. Danny died in hospital, taking his ghosts with him. Butte buried the case. O'Brien got life, Anaconda paid fines, but the mines churned on. Sean quit, moved to Missoula, haunted by Finn's name in the journal. The shafts were sealed, but miners swore they heard picks tapping and saw copper glint in the dark. Port Angeles, Washington, October 1955. The town was a stubborn speck on the edge of America, pinned between the churning strait of Juan de Fuca and the Olympic Mountains' shadowed folds. Rain fell in sheets, drumming on cedar shake roofs and turning dirt roads to sludge. Loggers felled timber in the hills, fishermen hauled cod from the sea, and the pulp mill's stink clung to everything. At night, fog rolled in, heavy as guilt, and the forest whispered tales of shipwrecks, ghosts, men who vanished. That fall, the whispers turned to screams as death came to the woods, lit by lanterns that burned too bright. Nora Hale was 29, a deputy with the Clallam County Sheriff's Office, her badge a hard-won prize in a man's world. Widowed at 25 when her husband, a logger, fell to a snapped cable, she'd traded grief for grit. Her grey eyes missed nothing, and her .38 revolver stayed close. On October 4th, Sheriff Tom Burke, a grizzled ex-Marine, radioed her to the Olympic. National Forest, 10 miles inland. Loggers, dead, he said, voice crackling. Looks bad. Nora drove her jeep through mist, tires chewing gravel, to a clearing where deputies milled under tarps. The victim was Eddie Crane, 34, a sawyer with a crooked grin and a bar tab at the Driftwood Tavern. He hung from a Douglas fir, rope creaking. 15 feet up, his flannel shirt was torn, his chest carved with a spiral crossed by 3 lines, like a rune. Blood crusted the cuts, shallow but precise. At the tree's base, an antique oil lantern glowed, its flame steady despite the rain. Nora's stomach turned. Eddie's eyes were wide, his neck bruised purple. Burke spat into the mud. "Cut him down," he said. The coroner, Doc Ellis, a chain-smoking Yankee, ruled strangulation, post-mortem carving. "Killer took his time," Ellis said. "Lantern's old, maybe 1890s. Port Angeles was small, 11,000 souls, mostly Swedes, Norwegians, and Klallam natives. News spread fast. Eddie's death hit like a stone in a pond. The Peninsula Daily News called it a gruesome find, urging calm. Nora knew Eddie from church. Suppers, he was loud, loyal, no enemies. She canvassed his crew at Crown Zellerbach, the logging outfit. His boss, Lars Olsen, 50, said Eddie worked late October 2nd, alone, felling timber. "Good man," Lars said, rubbing his beard. "Maybe. A drifter got him." Nora found Eddie's axe in the clearing, blade clean, and a whittled stick nearby, carved with the same spiral. On October 9th, a second body appeared, 3 miles west. Cal Weaver, 27, a fisherman, dangled from a hemlock, same rope, same carving, same lantern. Cal's skiff was found adrift off Ida's Hook, nets cut. His sister, Ruth, told Nora he'd argued with a dockhand, Mick Foley, over a loan. "Cal was scared," Ruth said, twisting her apron. "Said someone followed him." Nora questioned Foley, a wiry Irishman with a scar on his lip. "Cal owed me $50, Foley sneered. "I didn't kill him." His alibi held drunk. At the tavern, witnesses aplenty. The town locked its doors. Loggers carried rifles. Fishermen stayed ashore. Burke posted patrols, but the forest was vast, impossible to watch. Nora pored over the carvings, sketching them late in her trailer, rain tapping the tin roof. She visited Old Man Tolfsen, 78, a Klallam elder who carved totems. He squinted at her sketch. "Not ours," he said. "Looks like a sailor's mark from the old wrecks." He spoke of the Norwich Star, a British schooner that sank off Cape Flattery in 1887, killing 22. "Some say a survivor cursed the town," he said, voice low, "wanted blood for betrayal." Nora dug into the Norwich Star. Archives at the county library, musty and dim, held clippings. The ship carried timber and furs, wrecked in a storm. Locals looted the cargo, ignoring the crew's pleas. One survivor, a cabin boy named James Kerr, 16, was taken in, then vanished in 88. Nora wondered if the killer echoed Kerr's rage. The lanterns, brass and weathered, pointed to the sea. She checked the harbourmaster's log dozens of wrecks. No lanterns reported. At the docks, she found a pawnshop receipt for a similar lantern. Sold by Foley a month back. October 15th brought a third victim, Alma Lind, 42, a mill worker, found in a cedar grove. Alma, a spinster who lived alone, was strung up, carved, a lantern at her feet. Her purse held a photo of her brother, lost at sea in 43. Nora's gut-twisted Alma was kind, baked pies for deputies. The town meeting that night was chaos. Loggers blamed vagrants, fishermen the Klallam, who faced glares despite Tolfsen's denials. Burke shouted for order, but fear ruled. Nora noticed Lars Olsen slip out early, his hands shaking. Nora tailed Lars to a cabin off Hurricane Ridge, hidden in pines. She crept close, revolver drawn, and saw him burn papers in a barrel. She kicked the door, badge up. "Talk," she said. Lars, sweating, confessed to selling lanterns salvaged from wrecks for extra cash. Didn't know they'd be used like this, he said. The papers were letters threatening him to pay the debt. Nora arrested him for questioning, but his alibi for Eddie's murder held. The letters mentioned the Norwich Star, signed J.K.A. The carvings obsessed her. She consulted a Seattle historian, Dr. Clara Voss, by phone. Voss linked the spiral to Celtic knots, used by sailors for protection. The lines mean 3 lives, Voss said. A ritual, maybe. Nora realized the killer was counting Eddie, Cal, Alma. More would die. She staked out the forest, rain soaking her coat, eyes on every shadow. On October 20th, a scream led her to a ravine. Mick Foley hung from a spruce, carved, a lantern flickering. His knife, bloodied, lay nearby, but the cuts were too neat for suicide. Nora's break came at Foley's shack. Inside, she found a journal, pages scrawled with the debt is due and Norwich Star sketches. A photo showed Foley with an older man, gaunt, with pale eyes. On the back, a name, Jonah Kerr. Nora's pulse raced. Jonah, 62, was James Kerr's son, born to a barmaid in 93. She traced Jonah to a derelict boat at the marina. He was there, oiling a lantern, rope coiled at his feet. "You're late," he said, voice like gravel. Jonah didn't run. "My father was left to die," he said, eyes burning. Port Angeles took his gold, his hope. James survived the wreck, but the town's greed looting, shunning him, broke him. Jonah, raised on his father's hate, killed to punish descendants of the looters. Eddie's grandfather, Cal's uncle, Alma's father, Foley's canole, profited from the wreck. Jonah carved them with his father's knot, lit lanterns to guide their souls. Nora drew her gun. "It's over," she said. Jonah lunged with a knife. She fired, his body slumping into the tide. Port Angeles buried the dead, the case hushed to save tourism. Jonah's boat held 5 more lanterns, more planned kills. Nora burned them, ashes sinking in the strait. She stayed deputy, but the forest felt alive, watching. Locals swore lanterns glowed in the trees, and ropes creaked where no wind blew. Boston, Massachusetts, October 1690. The city was a Puritan fortress. Its cobblestone streets slick with rain, its wooden houses hunched against the harbor's chill. The witch trials of 92 were 2 years off, but fear of sin and Satan already gripped the town. Boston Common, a grassy expanse, was where cattle grazed and sermons echoed, but at night the trees whispered darker tales. In that grim autumn, a killer turned the common into a gallows, leaving bodies swaying with symbols that spoke of vengeance. Ezekiel Shaw was 37, constable of Boston, a gaunt man with eyes shadowed by guilt. He'd accused a neighbor in 88, sending her to jail for witchcraft. Her screams haunted him. On October 5th, Goodman John Hale burst into the watchhouse, trembling. "Sarah's dead," he said, "hanged in the common." Ezekiel grabbed, his flintlock heart racing, and followed through the fog Sarah Hale. 30 John's sister, hung from an oak rope, creaking. Her neck bore a carved symbol, a circle with 3 slashes, like claws. A note pinned to her shift read, "The wronged rise." A raven's feather was tucked into her hair. Ezekiel cut her down, hands shaking. Sarah was pious, a baker who fed the poor, who'd kill her. Surgeon William Griggs, 55, ruled strangulation, the carving post-mortem. "The symbol's old," he said. "Maybe pagan." Boston whispered of curses. Sarah was buried swiftly, Reverend Increase Mather, 51, praying over her. The council, led by Captain Samuel Sewell, 38, demanded answers. Indians, perhaps, Sewell said. Ezekiel doubted it. The note was too deliberate. He questioned John, who said Sarah had argued with widow Ruth Corey, 48, over a stolen Bible. She cursed us, John said. Ezekiel visited Ruth, her hut smelling of tallow. I wished her no harm, Ruth said, eyes sharp. Her alibi held praying. With neighbors, October 10th brought a second body near the common's edge. Thomas Pike, 42, a cooper, hung from a maple, same symbol, same note, same feather. His wife, Mary, said he'd quarreled with Edward Bliss, a merchant, over a debt. Bliss threatened him, she wept. Ezekiel confronted Bliss, a stout man, with a silver cane, at his shop. Thomas was a cheat, Bliss said, but I don't kill. His ledger cleared him, but Ezekiel noted his cloak, damp with mud. The town barred its doors. Militia patrolled, fearing Wampanoag raids, but the feathers felt personal. Ezekiel showed the note to Goody Hannah, 60, a healer. That symbol's Saxon, she said, means justice, used by outcasts. She spoke of a 1688 trial when a girl, Martha Wells, was jailed for witchcraft, dying in chains. Her family, John's father, Thomas's uncle, Bliss's brother, testified against her. Martha's kin, Caleb, swore revenge, Hannah said. He vanished. October 16th saw a third death. Abigail Bliss, 35, Edward's sister, a seamstress, hanged in a birch grove. Same symbol, note, feather. Abigail had sewn for the jail in 88. Her husband, James, said she'd seen a stranger near their barn. He carried a rope, James said. Ezekiel found a knife in the grove, its blade etched with a cross. He questioned Bliss again, who paled. I saw no one, Bliss said, hands trembling. Boston teetered on panic. Mather preached of Satan's wrath, but Ezekiel saw vengeance, not devils. He staked out the common, musket primed, rain soaking. His cloak, on October 21st, tracks led to a cellar under an abandoned barn. Inside, a fire glowed, with ropes, feathers, and a list: Hale, Pike, Bliss, Sewell. A figure moved, scarred, cloaked, eyes burning. Caleb, Ezekiel said. Caleb's dead, the man said. I'm Jonah. Jonah Wells, 32, Martha's brother, had survived, hiding with sailors. Your town killed her, he said, rope in hand. Hale, Pike, Bliss, they lied. Jonah's feathers, from a raven he kept, marked his oath. Sewell was next, his father the judge. Ezekiel raised his musket, no more. Jonah lunged, knife flashing. Ezekiel fired, the shot echoing. Jonah fell, blood pooling, a feather drifting. Ezekiel found Sewell, confessing his father's role. I was young, Sewell said, shaking. Jonah's list named Ezekiel 2, 4. His accusation, Ezekiel burned it, weary of death. Boston hushed the truth, blaming raiders. Jonah's body sank in the harbor, his feathers scattered. Ezekiel stayed constable, but the common whispered. At night, townsfolk swore they heard ropes creak, and saw feathers fall where the gallows stood. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, September 1720. The city was a young beacon, its brick houses and print shops bustling along the Delaware River. Quakers preached peace, but pamphlets fueled dissent, and the docks hummed with trade and secrets. In that restless autumn, a killer struck, leaving victims with quills dipped in their blood. A silent scream against the city's elite. Abigail Finch was 24, a printer's apprentice to Benjamin Franklin's brother, James. She wrote radical tracts under a pseudonym, her ink-stained hands hiding her fire. On September 6th, Franklin called her to the print shop, voice low. "Master Gray's dead," he said, "murdered." Abigail followed to an alley off Market Street, heart-pounding. William Gray, 45, a merchant, lay slumped, throat slit, a quill in his hand, blood pooling on the cobbles. A note pinned to his coat read, "Truth bleeds." Abigail's breath caught. Gray was a councilman, rich and ruthless. Coroner Samuel Keene, 50, ruled death by a single cut, the quill deliberate. "It's a printer's tool," he said. "Someone's sending a message." Philadelphia stirred with unease. Gray was buried, Reverend Jedediah Andrews, 44, praying. Over him, the council, led by Captain Isaac Norris, 49, demanded answers. "Rebels, maybe," Norris said. Abigail doubted it. The note was too personal. She questioned Gray's clerk, who said he'd argued with Thomas Penn, a landowner, over taxes. Penn cursed him, the clerk said. Abigail visited Penn, a tall man with a powdered wig, at his manor. "Gray was a thief," Penn said, "but I don't kill." His alibi held dinning with merchants. September 12th brought a second death in a print shop yard. Elizabeth Ward, 38, a bookseller, was found, throat cut, quill in hand, note reading, "Truth bleeds." Her husband, John, said she'd quarreled with Samuel Coates, a printer, over a stolen manuscript. Coates threatened her, John said. Abigail confronted Coates, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, at his press. "Elizabeth lied," he said, "but I'm no murderer." His books showed no theft, but Abigail saw his hands shake. The city locked its doors. Pamphlets screamed of a quill killer. Abigail, writing as Libertus, urged calm. She showed the note to Goody Rachel, 60, a Quaker scribe. "That phrase is old," Rachel said, "from a 1710 pamphlet banned for treason. It accused Gray, Ward, and Norris of stealing land from a Quaker family, the Welses. Their son Daniel swore revenge," Rachel said. "He's gone." September 18th saw a third death. James Coates, 34, Samuel's brother, a clerk, found in an alley, quill and note. James had printed the 10 pamphlet, then betrayed the Welses. His wife, Mary, said he'd seen a stranger near their shop. "He carried a knife," she said. Abigail found a quill fragment, bloodied, in the alley. She questioned Samuel again, who paled. "I saw no one," he said, "but his coat smelled of ink." Philadelphia teetered. Andrews preached of God's judgment, but Abigail saw greed. She staked out the dock's knife in her apron, rain falling. On September 23rd, tracks led to a warehouse. Inside, a press ran, printing notes. "Truth bleeds." A figure moved scarred, cloaked eyes sharp. "Daniel," Abigail said, voice steady. "Daniel's dead," he said. "I'm Ezra." Ezra Wells, 32, had survived, working as a dockhand. "Your city stole our land," he said, quill in hand. Gray, Ward, Coates, they lied. Ezra's quills, stolen from Franklin's shop, marked his oath. Norris was next, his father the thief. Abigail drew her knife. No more. Ezra lunged. She slashed, his arm bleeding. He fled, dropping a note. Abigail found Norris, confessing his father's fraud. "I was young," he said, trembling. Ezra's list named Abigail for printing. Lies, she burned it, weary of blood. Philadelphia hushed the truth, blaming vagrants. Ezra vanished, his quills gone. Abigail kept printing, but the alleys whispered. At night, printers swore they heard presses run, and saw quills gleam where truth bled. Albany, New York, October 1710. The town was a frontier crossroads. Its Dutch gables and English taverns pressed against the Hudson River. Fur traders and Iroquois mingled, but tensions, simmer trade, wars, land disputes, and whispers of betrayal. In that crisp autumn, a killer struck, leaving bodies gutted in the woods, a hollow mark for sins long buried. Peter Van Buren was 35. Constable, a Dutchman with a trader's cunning and a soldier's scars. He'd fought in Queen Anne's War, losing a brother to Iroquois arrows. On October 6th, trader Hans Vroom burst into the fort, trembling. "Dirk's dead," he said, "in the forest." Peter grabbed his musket, heart racing, and followed through the mist. Dirk Vroom, 32, Hans's brother, lay in a clearing, chest gutted, filled with sage and yarrow. A note on his coat read, "The Hollow Pays." A bone, carved with a hollowed circle, hung from his wrist. Peter's breath caught. Dirk was honest, a fur dealer. Coroner Jacobus Swart, 50, ruled death by gutting, the herbs deliberate. "It's a ritual," he said. Albany stirred with fear. Dirk was buried, Reverend Bernardus Freeman, 45, praying over him. The council, led by Captain Robert Livingston, 51, demanded answers. Iroquois, Livingston said. Peter doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned Hans, who said Dirk had argued with Willem Kuyper, a trader, over furs. Kuyper cursed him, Hans said. Peter visited Kuyper, a stout man with a fur cap, at his post. Dirk lied, Kuyper said, but I don't kill. His alibi held trading with Mohawks. October 11th brought a second death. Near the Mohawk River, Anna Schuyler, 29, a merchant's wife, was found, chest gutted, herbs stuffed, note reading the hollow pays. Her husband, David, said she'd quarreled with John Beekman, a landowner, over a debt. Beekman threatened her, David said. Peter confronted Beekman, a lean man with a gold watch, at his estate. Anna lied, Beekman said, but I'm no murderer. His books cleared him, but Peter saw sage in his yard. The town barred its gates. The Albany Gazette warned of a hollow killer. Peter showed the note to Goody Lisbeth, 60 Anne. Iroquois healer. That phrase is old, she said, from a 1690 trade deal. Traders, including Dirk's father, Anna's uncle, and Beekman's brother, cheated an Iroquois clan. Their son, Tiwas, swore revenge. Lisbeth said, he's gone. October 17th saw a third death. Peter Beekman, 34, John's brother, a trader, found in a pine grove, gutted, note and bone. Peter had traded in 90. His wife, Sarah, said he'd seen a stranger near their barn. He carried a knife. She said, Peter found a bone knife, bloodied, in the grove. He questioned John again, who paled. I saw no one, he said, hands trembling. Albany teetered. Freeman preached of heathen wrath, but Peter saw greed. He staked out the woods, musket primed, rain falling. On October 22nd, tracks led to a cave. Inside, a fire glowed, with knives, herbs, and a list. Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman, Livingston. A figure moved scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. Tiwas, Peter said. Tuas is dead, he said. I'm Corin. Corin Wolfe, 32, had survived, living as a trapper. "Your town stole our trade," he said, knife in hand. Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman, they profited. Karen's herbs, from his clan, marked his oath. Livingston was next, his father the thief. Peter drew his musket. No more, Corin lunged. Peter fired, the shot echoing. Corin fell, blood pooling. Peter found Livingston, confessing his father's fraud. "I was young," he said. Corin's list named Peter for trading with cheats. Peter burned it, weary of death. Albany hushed the truth, blaming savages. Karen's body sank in the Hudson, his bones buried. Peter stayed constable, but the woods whispered. At night, traders swore they heard knives scrape and saw herbs drift where the hollow's mark was paid. Williamsburg, Virginia, November 1695. The town was a raw capital, its dirt streets lined with grand houses and shacks. Tobacco smoke hung heavy, and the James River murmured secrets. Bacon's rebellion, 19 years past, had left scars distrust, burned barns, and whispers of betrayal. In that cold autumn, a killer stalked the night, leaving iron crosses to mark a deadly psalm. Daniel Finch was 30, watchman, once an indentured servant who'd earned his freedom. His hands bore whip scars, his eyes a quiet rage. On November 4th, Goodman Thomas Ward burst into the guardhouse, trembling. "Ruth's dead," he said, in the alley. Daniel grabbed his lantern, pulse racing, and followed through the rain. Ruth Ward, 27, Thomas's sister, lay in an alley off Duke of Gloucester Street, throat slit, an iron cross nailed to her chest. A note read, "Psalm of Wrath, Daniel's." Breath caught. Ruth was a maid, gentle. Coroner John Page, 50, ruled death by a single cut, the cross deliberate. "It's old," he said. "Rebel work." Williamsburg stirred with fear. Ruth was buried. Reverend Robert Hunt, 40, praying over her. The council, led by Captain Francis Nicholson, 45, demanded answers. "Vagrants," Nicholson said. Daniel doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned Thomas, who said Ruth had argued with widow Sarah Pike, 42, over a stolen ring. "She cursed us," Thomas said. Daniel visited Sarah, her hut smelling of wax. "I wished her no harm," Sarah said, eyes steady. Her alibi held sewing with neighbors. November 9th brought a second death, near the church. Edward Gray, 39, a carpenter, lay with throat slit, cross-nailed, note-reading Psalm of Wrath. His wife, Mary, said he'd quarreled with Henry Cole, a planter, over wages. Cole threatened him. Mary said. Daniel confronted Cole, a tall man with a silver buckle, at his estate. Gray lied, Cole said, but I don't kill. His books showed payment, but Daniel saw ash on his boots. The town barred its gates. The Virginia Gazette warned of a cross-killer. Daniel showed the note to Goody Martha, 55, a healer. That phrase is old, she said, from Bacon's rebellion. Planters, including Ruth's father, Edward's uncle, and Cole's brother, betrayed rebels for land. A boy, Simon, swore revenge. Martha said, he's gone. November 15 saw a third death. Elizabeth Cole, 32, Henry's sister, a weaver, found in a stable, cross and note. Elizabeth had worked for the rebels. Her husband, James, said she'd seen a stranger near their field. He carried a knife, James said. Daniel found a blade etched with a cross in the straw. He questioned Cole again, who paled. I saw no one, he said, hands trembling. Williamsburg teetered. Hunt preached of God's judgment, but Daniel saw greed. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. On November 20th, tracks led to a barn. Inside, a lantern glowed with knives, crosses, and a list. Ward, Gray, Cole, Nicholson. A figure moved scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. Simon. Daniel said, "Simon's dead," he said. "I'm Jonah." Jonah Wells, 30, had survived, working as a laborer. "Your town betrayed us," he said, knife in hand. Ward, Gray, cold, they profited. Jonah's crosses from a rebel's. Forge marked his oath. Nicholson was next, his father the traitor. Daniel drew his pistol. No more. Jonah lunged. Daniel fired, the shot echoing. Jonah fell, blood pooling. Daniel found Nicholson confessing his father's fraud. "I was young," he said. Jonah's list named Daniel for serving the planters. Daniel burned it, weary of death. Williamsburg hushed the truth, blaming vagrants. Jonah's body sank in the river, his crosses melted. Daniel stayed watchman, but the alleys whispered. At night, townsfolk swore they saw crosses gleam and heard psalms echo where the debt burned. Newport, Rhode Island, August 1700. The port was a den of vice, its wharves thick with the creak of sloops and the stench of tar. Pirates like Thomas Chew swaggered through taverns, while merchants traded rum and slaves. The Narragansett Bay glittered, but its depths hid secret shipwrecks, betrayals, and blood. In that sultry summer, a killer haunted the docks, leaving sailors drowned in their own helms, a shadow cast by a cursed oath. Thomas Reed was 38, watchman, a former sailor with a limp from a cannon blast. His wife died in 95, leaving him with a son, Peter, 12. On August 7th, Captain John Gibbs burst into the watchhouse, trembling. "Jonas is dead," he said, in the harbour. Thomas grabbed his pistol, pulse racing, and followed through. The fog, Jonas Pike, 33, a sailor, lay in his bunk on the Swift Gull, mouth stuffed with sand, hands bound with rope. A helm filled with sand sat beside him, a note reading, "The helm holds." Thomas's breath caught. Jonas was honest, a father. Coroner William Moore, 50, ruled drowning, the sand deliberate. "The helm's old," he said. "Pirate work. Newport." Stirred with fear, Jonas was buried, Reverend Samuel Cranston, 40, praying over him. The council, led by Governor Walter Clark, 51, demanded answers. "Pirates," Clark said. Thomas doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned Gibbs, who said Jonas had argued with Henry Vane, a merchant, over cargo. Vane cursed him, Gibbs said. Thomas visited Vane, a lean man with a gold chain, at his warehouse. Jonas lied, Vane said, "but I don't kill." His alibi held trading with planters. August 12th brought a second death on the Asterisk Blue. Turn, asterisk. Margaret Cole, 29, a sailor's wife, was found. Sand in her mouth, helm beside her, note reading "The helm holds." Her husband, Peter, said she'd quarreled with Edward Bliss, a dockhand, over wages. Bliss threatened her, Peter said. Thomas confronted Bliss, a wiry man with a scarred lip, at the docks. Margaret lied. Bliss said, "But I'm no murderer." His log showed him working, but Thomas saw sand on his boots. The city locked its ships. The Newport Mercury warned of a helm killer. Thomas showed the note to Goody Esther, 60, a tavern keeper. That phrase is old, she said. From a 1690 wreck, the Black Sloop. It sank, crew betrayed by merchants, including Jonas's father, Margaret's uncle, and Bliss's brother. A boy, Simon, swore revenge, Esther said. He's gone. August 18th saw a third death. Samuel Bliss, 35, Edward's brother, a sailor. Found on the Starling, sand and note. Samuel had crewed the Black Sloop. His wife Anne said he'd seen a stranger near the docks. He carried a rope, she said. Thomas found a knotted cord, bloodied, in the hold. He questioned Edward again, who paled. I saw no one, he said, hands trembling. Newport teetered. Cranston preached of God's wrath, but Thomas saw betrayal. He staked out the docks, pistol primed, rain falling. On August 23rd, tracks led to a derelict sloop. Inside, a lantern glowed, with ropes, sand, and a list: Pike, Cole, Bliss, Clark. A figure moved, scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. Simon. Thomas said. Simon's dead, he said. I'm Paul Reed, 32, Simon's brother, had survived, working as a smuggler. Your city betrayed us, he said, rope in hand. Pike, Cole, Bliss, they stole our gold. Paul's sand, from the wreck, marked his oath. Clark was next, his father, the traitor. Thomas drew his pistol. No more. Paul lunged, Thomas fired, the shot echoing. Paul fell, blood pooling. Thomas found Clark, confessing his father's greed. I was young, he said. Paul's list named Thomas, for guarding the wreck. Thomas burned it, weary of death. Newport hushed the truth, blaming pirates. Paul's body sank in the bay, his ropes burned. Thomas stayed watchman, but the docks whispered. At night, sailors swore they heard waves crash and saw sand spill where the helm held. Salem, Massachusetts, September 1670. The town was a Puritan stronghold. Its wooden houses pressed against the harbor's chill. The forest loomed, whispering of sin and Satan. 22 years before the witch trials, fear of God's wrath ruled, and old accusations lingered like smoke. In that grim autumn, a killer draped Salem in crimson, leaving bodies veiled in blood-soaked cloth, a silent vow of retribution. Samuel Ward was 32, constable, a broad man with a sailor's scars. His faith faltered since his brother's death in 65, leaving him with a son, John, 8. On September 5th, Goody Mary Hale burst into the watch-house, trembling. Anne's dead, she wept. In the alley, Samuel grabbed his flintlock, pulse racing, and followed through the fog. Anne Hale, 27, Mary's sister, lay in an alley off Essex Street, throat slit, a crimson veil over her face. A cross was carved into her palm. A note pinned to her shift read, "The veil falls." Samuel's breath caught. Anne was pious, a seamstress. Surgeon John Proctor, 50, ruled death by a single cut, the veil deliberate. The cross is old, he said. Maybe Quaker. Salem stirred with dread. Anne was buried. Reverend John Higginson, 45, praying over her. The council, led by Captain William Hathorne, 48, demanded answers. Heretics, Hathorne said. Samuel doubted it. The note was too personal. He questioned. Mary, who said Anne had argued with widow Sarah Pike, 40, over a stolen Bible. She cursed us, Mary said. Samuel visited Sarah, her hut smelling of wax. I wished her no harm, Sarah said, eyes sharp. Her alibi held praying with neighbors, September. 10 brought a second death near the harbour. Thomas Gray, 39, a cooper, lay with throat slit, veiled, cross-carved. His wife, Elizabeth, said he'd quarrelled with Edward Bliss, a merchant, over a debt. Bliss threatened him. She wept. Samuel confronted Bliss, a stout man with a gold chain, at his shop. Thomas lied. Bliss said, "But I don't kill." His ledger cleared him, but Samuel saw blood on his boots. The town barred its doors. Militia patrolled, fearing Quakers, but the Vales felt personal. Samuel showed the note to Goody Ruth, 55, a healer. "That phrase is old," she said, from a 1650 witchcraft trial. Anne's father, Thomas's uncle, and Bliss's brother accused a woman, Martha Wells, who died in jail. Her son, Daniel, swore revenge. Ruth said, "He's gone." September 16th saw a third death. Abigail Bliss, 31, Edward's sister. A weaver, found in a stable, veiled, note-pinned. Abigail had testified in 50. Her husband, James, said she'd seen a stranger near their field. He carried a knife, James said. Samuel found a blade, etched with a cross, in the straw. He questioned Bliss again, who paled. "I saw no one," he said, hands trembling. Salem teetered. Higginson preached of Satan's wrath, but Samuel saw hypocrisy. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. On September 21st, tracks led to a barn. Inside, a lantern glowed, with knives, veils, and a list, Hale, Gray, Bliss. A figure moved scarred, cloaked, eyes sharp. "Daniel," Samuel said. "Daniel's dead," he said. "I'm Ezra." Ezra Wells, 28, had survived, working as a labourer. "Your town killed her," he said, knife in hand. Hale Gray, Blissed they lied. Ezra's veils, from his mother's loom, marked his oath. Hathorne was next, his father the accuser. Samuel drew his pistol. No more. Ezra lunged. Samuel fired, the shot echoing. Ezra fell, blood pooling. Samuel found Hathorne confessing. His father's lies. "I was young," he said. Ezra's list named Samuel for guarding the jail. Samuel burned it, weary of death. Salem hushed the truth, blaming vagrants. Ezra's body sank in the harbour, his veils burned. Samuel stayed. Constable, but the alleys whispered. At night, townsfolk swore they saw crimson flicker, and heard knives scrape where the veil fell. Hartford, Connecticut, October 1665. The settlement was a fragile outpost. Its log houses pressed against the Connecticut river's muddy banks, pine. Forests loomed, their shadows thick with whispers of Pequot raids and Puritan sins. The colony, founded by dissenters seeking God's grace, was a crucible of faith and fear, where land disputes and old grudges festered like wounds. In that bleak autumn, a killer struck, turning the woods into a gallows, their victims bound by thorns and a vow of vengeance. Ezra Hale was 34, constable of Hartford, a wiry man with a soldier's scars from the Pequot War. His faith wavered since his wife's death in 62, leaving him with a daughter, Mercy, 10. On October 4th, Goodman John Pratt burst into the guardhouse, trembling. "Sarah's dead," he gasped, "hanged in the forest." Ezra grabbed his musket, heart pounding, and followed through the mist. Sarah Pratt, 29, John's sister, hung from an oak, a vine of thorns wrapped round her neck. A parchment nailed to her chest read, "Covenant kept." A bone bead, Pequot style, dangled from her wrist. Ezra cut her down, hands shaking. Sarah was devout, a weaver who led prayers. Surgeon Thomas Wells, 50, ruled strangulation, the thorns post-mortem, the beads old, he said, native work. Hartford stirred with dread. Sarah was buried, Reverend Samuel Stone, 40, praying over her. The council, led by Captain John Mason, 48, demanded answers. Savages, Mason said. Ezra doubted it. The parchment was too deliberate. He questioned John, who said Sarah had argued with widow Ruth Cole, 45, over a stolen cow. She cursed us, John said. Ezra visited Ruth, her hut smelling of herbs. I wished her no harm, Ruth said, eyes sharp. Her alibi held praying with neighbors. October 9th brought a second death, near the river. Edward Marsh, 41, a tanner, hung from a cedar, thorns and parchment. His wife, Mary, said he'd quarreled with Thomas Black, a merchant, over a debt. Black threatened him. She wept. Ezra confronted Black, a stout man with a silver chain, at his shop. Edward lied, Black said, but I don't kill. His ledger cleared him, but Ezra saw mud on his boots. The town barred its doors. Militia patrolled, fearing raids, but the thorns felt personal. Ezra showed the parchment to Goody Hannah, 60, a healer. That phrase is old, she said, from a 1640 land deal. Settlers, including Sarah's father, Edward's uncle, and Black's brother, stole Pequot land. A boy, Caleb, swore revenge, Hannah said. He's gone. October 15th saw a third death. Abigail Black, 33, Thomas's sister, a seamstress, hanged in a pine grove. Thorns, parchment, bead. Abigail had worked for the deal's overseer. Her husband, James, said she'd seen a stranger near their field. He carried a rope, James said. Ezra found a knife, etched with a thorn, in the grove. He questioned Black again, who paled. I saw no one, he said, hands trembling. Hartford teetered. Stone preached of God's wrath, but Ezra saw greed. He staked out the woods, musket primed, rain falling. On October 20th, tracks led to a cave. Inside, a fire glowed, with ropes, beads, and a list. Pratt, Marsh, Black, Mason. A figure moved scarred. Cloaked eyes, sharp. Caleb, Ezra said. Caleb's dead, he said. I'm Jonah. Jonah, Pequot 30, had survived, living as a trapper. Your town stole our land, he said, knife in hand. Pratt, Marsh, Black they profited. Jonah's beads, from his clan, marked his oath. Mason was next, his father the thief. Ezra drew his musket. No more. Jonah lunged. Ezra fired, the shot echoing. Jonah fell, blood pooling. Ezra found Mason, confessing his father's fraud. I was young, he said. Jonah's list named Ezra, for fighting in 37. Ezra burned it, weary of death. Hartford hushed the truth, blaming raiders. Jonah's body sank in the river, his beads buried. Ezra stayed constable, but the woods whispered. At night, settlers swore they heard thorns rustle, and saw covenants drift where the gallows stood. Hartford, Connecticut, October 1665. Rain lashed the settlement, its log houses pressed against the Connecticut rivers, muddy banks. Pine forests loomed, whispering of Pequot raids and Puritan sins. The colony, founded by dissenters, was a crucible of faith and fear, where land disputes festered. In that bleak autumn, a killer turned the woods into a gallows, binding victims with thorns and a vow of retribution. Ezra Hale, 34, Constable bore scars from the Pequot War. His wife's death in 62 left him with mercy, 10, and a wavering faith. On October 4th, Goodman John Pratt burst into the guardhouse. "Sarah's dead," he gasped, "hanged in the forest." Ezra grabbed his musket and followed through the mist. Sarah Pratt, 29, John's sister, hung from an oak, a vine around her neck. A parchment nailed to her chest read, "Covenant kept." A bone bead dangled from her wrist. Ezra cut her down, hands trembling. Sarah wove cloth, led prayers. Surgeon Thomas Wells, 50, ruled strangulation. Thorns post-mortem. The beads Pequot, he said. Hartford stirred with dread. Sarah was buried. Reverend Samuel Stone, 40, praying. Captain John Mason, 48, demanded answers. "Savages," he said. Ezra doubted it. The parchment was deliberate. John said Sarah argued with widow Ruth Cole, 45, over a cow. She cursed. "Us," John said. Ezra visited Ruth, her hut herb-scented. "I wished no harm," Ruth said. Her alibi held. October 9th, Edward Marsh, 41, a tanner, hung from a cedar, thorns, parchment, bead. His wife, Mary, said he quarreled with Thomas Black, a merchant, over a debt. Black threatened him, she wept. Ezra confronted Black, stout with a silver chain, at his shop. Edward lied, Black said. His ledger cleared him, but Ezra saw mud on his boots. The town barred doors. Militia patrolled, fearing raids. Ezra showed the parchment to Goody Hannah, 60 a healer. From a 1640 land deal, she said. Settlers stole Pequot land. Sarah's father, Edward's uncle. Black's brother, profited. Caleb swore revenge, Hannah said. He's gone. October 15th, Abigail Black, 33, Thomas's sister, a seamstress, hung in a pine grove thorns, parchment. She worked for the deal's overseer. Her husband, James, said she saw a stranger. He carried a rope, James said. Ezra found a knife in the grove. He questioned Black, who paled. I saw no one, he said. Hartford teetered. Stone preached of God's wrath, but Ezra saw greed. He staked out the woods, musket primed, rain falling. October 20th, tracks led to a cave. A fire glowed, with ropes, beads, a list, Pratt, Marsh, Black, Mason. A scarred figure moved. Caleb, Ezra said. Caleb's dead, he said. I'm Jonah. Jonah, Pequot 30, survived, a trapper. Your town stole our land, he said, knife gleaming. Pratt, Marsh, Black profited. Jonah's beads marked his oath. Mason was next. Ezra drew his musket. No more. Jonah lunged. Ezra fired. Jonah fell, blood pooling. Ezra found Mason, confessing his father's fraud. Jonah's list named Ezra for fighting in 37. Ezra burned it. Hartford blamed raiders. Jonah's body sank in the river. Ezra stayed constable, but the woods whispered. Settlers heard thorns rustle where the covenant stood. Salem, Massachusetts, September 1670. Rain soaked the town. Its wooden houses pressed against the harbor's chill. Forests whispered of sin, 22 years before the witch trials. Fear of God's wrath ruled, and old accusations lingered. In that grim autumn, a killer draped Salem in crimson, leaving bodies veiled in blood-soaked cloth, a vow of retribution. Samuel Ward, 32, constable, bore sailor's scars. His brother's death in 65 left him with John, 8, and faltering faith. On September 5th, Goody Mary Hale burst in. "Anne's dead," she wept, in the alley. Samuel grabbed his flintlock and followed through the fog. Anne Hale, 27, Mary's sister, lay in an alley off Essex Street, throat slit, a crimson veil over her face. A cross was carved into her palm. A note read, "The veil falls." Samuel's breath caught. Anne was pious, a seamstress. Surgeon John Proctor, 50, ruled, "A single cut, the veil deliberate." "The cross is Quaker," he said. Salem stirred with dread. Anne was buried, Reverend John Higginson, 45, praying. Captain William Hathon, 48, demanded answers. "Heretics," he said. Samuel doubted it. The note was personal. "Mary," said Anne, "argued with widow Sarah Pike, 40, over a Bible. She cursed us," Mary said. Samuel visited Sarah, her hut wax-scented. "I wished no harm," Sarah said. Her alibi held. September 10th, Thomas Gray, 39, a cooper, lay in a harbour alley, throat slit, veiled, cross-carved, note reading, "The veil falls." His wife, Elizabeth, said he quarrelled with Edward Bliss, a merchant, over a debt. Bliss threatened him, she wept. Samuel confronted Bliss, stout with a gold chain, at his shop. Thomas lied, Bliss said. His ledger cleared him, but Samuel saw blood on his boots. The town barred doors. Militia patrolled, fearing Quakers. Samuel showed the note to Goody. Ruth, 55, a healer. From a 1650 witchcraft trial, she said, "Anne's father, Thomas's uncle, Bliss's brother, accused Martha Wells, who died in jail. Her son, Daniel, swore revenge," Ruth said. "He's gone." September 16th, Abigail Bliss, 31, Edward's sister, a weaver, was found in a stable, veiled, note pinned. She testified in 50. Her husband, James, said she saw a stranger. "He carried a knife," James said. Samuel found a cross-edged blade in the straw. He questioned Bliss, who paled. "I saw no one," he said. Salem teetered. Higginson preached of Satan's wrath, but Samuel saw hypocrisy. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. September 21st, tracks led to a barn. A lantern glowed with knives, veils, a list Hale, Gray, Bliss, Hathorn. A scarred figure moved. "Daniel," Samuel said. "Daniel's dead," he said. "I'm Ezra, Ezra Wells, 28, survived, a laborer. Your town killed her," he said, knife gleaming. Hale Gray, Bliss lead. Ezra's veils, from his mother's loom, marked his oath. Hatheron was next. Samuel drew his pistol. No more. Ezra lunged. Samuel fired. Ezra fell. Samuel found Hathorn, confessing his father's lies. Ezra's list named Samuel for guarding the jail. Samuel burned it. Salem blamed vagrants. Ezra's body sank in the harbour. Samuel stayed constable, but the alleys whispered. Townsfolk heard crimson rustle where the veil fell. Newport, Rhode Island, August 1700. The port was a den of vice, its wharves creaking with sloops, stinking of tar. Pirates swaggered through taverns, merchants traded rum and slaves. Narragansett Bay glittered, hiding shipwrecks and betrayals. In that sultry summer, a killer haunted the docks, drowning sailors in their bunks, mouths filled with sand, a shadow cast by a cursed oath. Thomas Reed, 38, watchman, limped from a cannon blast. His wife died in 95, leaving Peter, 12. On August 7th, Captain John Gibbs burst in. "Jonas is dead," he said, "in the harbor." Thomas grabbed his pistol and followed through the fog. Jonas Pike, 33, a sailor, lay in his bunk on the Swift. Gull, mouth stuffed with sand, hands bound. A helm, sand-filled, sat beside him, a note reading, "The helm holds." Thomas's breath caught. Jonas was honest, a father. Coroner William Moore, 50, ruled drowning, no water near. The Sands Harbor, Moore said. Newport, stirred with fear. Jonas was buried, Reverend Samuel Cranston, 40, praying. Governor Walter Clark, 51, demanded answers. "Pirates," Clark said. Thomas doubted it. The note was deliberate. "Gibbs," said Jonas, argued with Henry Vane, a merchant, over cargo. Vane cursed him, Gibbs said. Thomas visited Vane, lean with a gold chain, at his warehouse. Jonas? Lead, Vane said. His alibi held. August 12th, Margaret Cole, 29, a sailor's wife, was found on the Blue Tern, sand in her mouth, helm beside her, note reading "The helm holds." Her husband, Peter, said she quarreled with Edward Bliss, a dockhand, over wages. Bliss threatened her, Peter said. Thomas confronted Bliss, wiry with a scarred lip, at the docks. Margaret lied. Bliss said his log cleared him, but Thomas saw sand on his boots. The city locked ships. The Mercury warned of a helm killer. Thomas showed the note to Goody Esther, 60, a tavern keeper. From a 1690 wreck, the Black Sloop, she said. Jonas's father, Margaret's uncle, Bliss's brother, profited from betrayal. Simon swore revenge, Esther said. He's gone. August 18th, Samuel Bliss, 35, Edward's brother, a sailor, was found on the Starling, sand and note. Samuel crewed the Black Sloop. His wife Anne said he saw a stranger. He carried a rope, she said. Thomas found a bloodied cord in the hold. He questioned Edward, who paled. I saw no one, he said. Newport teetered. Cranston preached of God's wrath, but Thomas saw betrayal. He staked out the docks, pistol primed, rain falling. August 23rd, tracks led to a derelict sloop. A lantern glowed with ropes, sand. A list, Pike, Cole, Bliss, Clark. A scarred figure moved. Simon, Thomas said. Simon's dead, he said. I'm Paul Reed, 32, survived, a smuggler. Your city betrayed us, he said, rope gleaming. Pike, Cole, Bliss stole our gold. Paul's sand marked his oath. Clark was next. Thomas drew his pistol. No more. Paul lunged. Thomas fired. Paul fell. Thomas found Clark, confessing his father's greed. Paul's list named Thomas for guarding the wreck. Thomas burned it. Newport blamed pirates. Paul's body sank in the bay. Thomas stayed watchman, but the docks whispered. Sailors heard waves crash where the helm held. New Haven, Connecticut. September 1655. Rain battered the settlement, its timber houses clinging to the Quinnipiac River's edge. Dense forests loomed, whispering of sin and Quinnipiac shadows. The Puritan colony, founded for God's glory, was a crucible of faith and fear, where land disputes with native tribes festered. In that grim autumn, a killer struck, carving runes into flesh and leaving ash to mark a deadly vow. Tobias Crane, 33, constable, bore scars from a 1643 militia skirmish. His wife's death in 50 left him with a daughter, Faith, 8, and a brittle faith. On September 3rd, Goodman William Pratt burst into the guardhouse. "Jane's dead," he gasped, in the woods. Tobias grabbed his flintlock and followed. Through the fog, Jane Pratt, 26, William's sister, lay in a clearing, chest carved with a runa circle split by a jagged line. A note, streaked with ash, read, "The rune redeems." Tobias's breath caught. Jane was pious, a weaver. Surgeon John Davenport, 50, ruled a single cut, the rune post-mortem. "It's Quinnipiac," he said. New Haven stirred with dread. Jane was buried. Reverend John Cotton, 40, praying. Governor Theophilus Eaton, 64, demanded answers. "Savages," he said. Tobias doubted it. The note was deliberate. William said. Jane argued with widow Mary Cole, 42, over a stolen loom. "She cursed us," William said. Tobias visited Mary, her hut herb-scented. "I wished no harm," Mary said. Her alibi held. September 8th, Thomas Ward, 38, a tanner, was found in a pine grove, rune-carved, note ash-tricked. His wife, Sarah, said he quarreled with Henry Bliss, a merchant, over a debt. Bliss threatened him. She wept. Tobias confronted Bliss, stout with a silver chain, at his shop. Ward lied, Bliss said. His ledger cleared him, but Tobias saw ash on his boots. The town barred doors. Militia patrolled, fearing raids. Tobias showed the note to Goody Ruth, 55, a healer, from a 1645 land deal, she said. Settlers stole Quinnipiac land. Jane's father, Thomas's uncle, Bliss's brother, profited. A boy, Thames, swore revenge, Ruth said. He's gone. September 14th, Abigail Bliss, 30, Henry's sister, a seamstress, was found in a meadow, rune-carved, note-pinned. She worked for the deal's overseer. Her husband, John, said she saw a stranger. He carried a knife, John said. Tobias found a rune-etched blade in the grass. He questioned Henry, who paled. "I saw no one," he said. New Haven teetered. Cotton preached of God's wrath, but Tobias saw greed. He staked out the woods, pistol primed, rain falling. September 19, tracks led to a cave. A fire glowed, with knives, ash, a list, Pratt, Ward, Bliss, Eaton. A scarred figure moved. "Thames," Tobias said. "Thames is dead," he said. "I'm Seth." Seth Quinnipiac, 28, survived, a trapper. "Your town stole our land," he said, knife gleaming. Pratt, Ward, Bliss, profited. Seth's runes marked his oath. Eaton was next. Tobias drew his pistol. "No more," Seth lunged. Tobias fired. Seth fell. Tobias found Eaton, confessing his role in the theft. Seth's list named Tobias for militia duty. Tobias burned it. New Haven blamed raiders. Seth's body sank in the river. Tobias stayed constable, but the woods whispered. Settlers heard ash fall where the rune redeemed, Annapolis, Maryland. October 1670. Rain soaked the settlement. Its wooden houses pressed against the Seven Rivers' muddy banks. Forests whispered of Catholic plots and Puritan fears. The colony, a haven for dissenters, was tense with religious strife. In that grim autumn, a killer struck, poisoning victims with chalices that bore silent prayers. Caleb Ward, 31, watchman, bore scars from a 1660 militia raid. His brother's death in 65 left him with a son, James, 9, and a faltering faith. On October 5th, Goody Elizabeth Gray burst in. Margaret's dead, she wept. In the tavern, Caleb grabbed his pistol and followed through the fog. Margaret Gray, 29, Elizabeth's sister, lay in the tavern's back room. Lips blue, a silver chalice beside her, etched with a cross and prayer. Splentium. A note read, "The chalice cleanses." Caleb's breath caught. Margaret was pious, a baker. Coroner Thomas Proctor, 50, ruled poison, the chalice deliberate. "It's Catholic," he said. Annapolis stirred with dread. Margaret was buried. Reverend Charles Nicoletts, 45, praying. Governor Charles Calvert, 33, demanded answers. "Papists," he said. Caleb doubted it. The note was personal. "Elizabeth," said Margaret, argued with Widow Ann Pike, 40, over a stolen Bible. "She cursed us," Elizabeth said. Caleb visited Anne, her hut wax-scented. "I wished no harm," Anne said. Her alibi held. October 10th, Thomas Ward, 37, a cooper, was found in his shop, lips blue, chalice etched. Note reading, "The chalice cleanses." His wife, Mary, said he quarreled with Edward Bliss, a merchant, over a debt. Bliss threatened him. She wept. Caleb confronted Bliss, stout, with a gold chain, at his shop. Ward lied, Bliss said. His ledger cleared him, but Caleb saw wax on his boots. The town barred doors. Militia patrolled, fearing Catholics. Caleb showed the note to Goody Sarah, 55, a healer. From a 1660 raid, she said. Catholics were jailed. Margaret's father, Thomas's uncle, Bliss's brother led the raid. A priest's son, Daniel, swore revenge, Sarah said. He's gone. October 16th, Abigail Bliss, 32, Edward's sister, a seamstress, was found in a stable, chalice. And note, she aided the raid. Her husband, John, said she saw a stranger. He carried a vial, John said. Caleb found a cross-etched vial in the straw. He questioned Bliss, who paled. I saw no one, he said. Annapolis teetered. Preached of Satan's wrath, but Caleb saw hypocrisy. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. October 21st, tracks led to a cellar. A lantern glowed with vials, chalices, a list, Gray, Ward, Bliss, Calvert. A scarred figure moved. Daniel, Caleb said. Daniel's dead, he said. I'm Ezra, Ezra Calvert, 28, survived, a laborer. Your town jailed my father, he said, vial gleaming. Gray Ward, Bliss profited. Ezra's chalices marked his oath. Calvert was next. Caleb drew his pistol. No more. Ezra lunged. Caleb fired. Ezra fell. Caleb found Calvert, confessing his role in the raid. Ezra's list named Caleb for militia duty. Caleb burned it. Annapolis blamed vagrants. Ezra's body sank in the river. Caleb stayed watchman, but the alleys whispered. Townsfolk heard chalices clink where the silent prayer cleansed. New York City, New York, September 1680, rain drenched the settlement. Its Dutch gables and English taverns pressed against the Hudson River. Forests whispered of trade wars and betrayal. The city, once New Amsterdam, was a melting pot of greed. In that crisp autumn, a killer struck, stabbing victims with crests that withered in blood. Jacob Finch, 34, watchman, bore scars from a 1664 English raid. His wife's death in 75 left him with a son, Peter, 10, and a faltering faith. On September 4, Merchant Hans Vroom burst in. Dirk's dead, he said, in the alley. Jacob grabbed his pistol and followed through the fog. Dirk Vroom, 31, Hans's brother, lay in an alley off Wall Street, stabbed. A withered crester shield with a broken arrow pinned to his chest. A note read, "The crest falls. Jacob's." Breath caught. Dirk was a traitor. Coroner Peter Swart, 50, ruled a single stab. The crest deliberate. "It's Dutch," he said. New York stirred with fear. Dirk was buried. Reverend Henricus Sellens, 45, praying. Governor Edmund Andros, 43, demanded answers. "Rebels," he said. Jacob doubted it. The note was personal. Hans said Dirk argued. With Willem Kuyper, a trader, over furs. Kuyper cursed him, Hans said. Jacob visited Kuyper, stout with a fur cap, at his post. Dirk lied, Kuyper said. His alibi held. September 9th, Anna Schuyler, 28, a merchant's wife, was found near the docks. Stabbed, crest pinned, note reading the crest falls. Her husband, David, said she quarreled with John Beekman, a landowner, over a debt. Beekman threatened her, David said. Jacob confronted Beekman, lean with a gold watch, at his estate. Anna lied, Beekman said. His books cleared him, but Jacob saw blood on his boots. The city barred gates. The Gazette warned of a crest killer. Jacob showed the note to Goody Lisbeth, 60, a healer. From a 1660 trade deal, she said. Dutch traders cheated locals. Dirk's father, Anna's uncle, Beekman's brother, profited. A boy T-was, swore revenge, Lisbeth said. He's gone. September 15th, Peter Beekman, 33, John's brother, a trader, was found in a stable, stabbed, crest and note, Peter. Traded in 60. His wife, Sarah, said he saw a stranger. He carried a knife, Sarah said. Jacob found a crest-edged blade in the straw. He questioned John, who paled. I saw no one, he said. New York teetered. Sellens preached of gods. Wrath, but Jacob saw greed. He staked out the alleys, pistol primed, rain falling. September 20th, tracks led to a cellar. A lantern glowed with knives, crests, a list, Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman, Andros. A scarred figure moved. T-was, Jacob said. Tuas is dead. He said, I'm Caron. Caron Vroom, 28. Survived, a laborer. Your city stole our trade, he said, knife gleaming. Vroom, Schuyler, Beekman profited. Karen's crests marked his oath. Andros was next. Jacob drew his pistol. No. More. Corin lunged. Jacob fired. Corin fell. Jacob found Andros, confessing his role in the deal. Corin's list named Jacob for militia duty. Jacob burned it. New York blamed vagrants. Corin's body sank in the Hudson. Jacob stayed watchman, but the alleys whispered. Townsfolk heard knives scrape where the crest fell. Charleston, South. Carolina, August 1695. Rain lashed the port, its wharves creaking with sloops, stinking of tar. Merchants traded rice and slaves, while pirates lurked offshore. The Ashley River whispered of wealth and betrayal. In that sultry summer, a killer haunted the docks. Drowning victims with compasses shattered in their hands, an oath of vengeance, Nathaniel. Reed, 36, watchman, limped from a 1685 shipwreck. His wife's death in 90 left him with a daughter, Sarah, 11, and a faltering faith. On August 6th, Captain John Gibbs burst in. Jonas is dead, he said, in the harbor. Nathaniel grabbed his pistol and followed through the fog. Jonas. Pike, 32, a sailor, lay in his bunk on the swift gull, drowned, mouth stuffed with sand, a shattered compass in his hand. A note read, the compass breaks. Nathaniel's breath caught. Jonas was honest, a father. Coroner William Moore, 50, ruled drowning, no water near. The compass is old, he said. Charleston stirred with fear. Jonas was buried, Reverend. Francis Lejeau, 40, praying. Governor John Archdale, 48, demanded answers. Pirates, he said. Nathaniel doubted it. The note was personal. Gibbs said Jonas argued with Henry Vane, a merchant, over cargo. Vane cursed him, Gibbs said. Nathaniel visited Vane, lean with a gold chain, at his warehouse. Jonas, lead, Vane said. His alibi held. August 11th, Margaret Cole, 28, a sailor's wife, was found on the Blue Tern, drowned, compass shattered, note reading, the compass breaks. Her husband, Peter, said she quarrelled with Edward Bliss, a dockhand, over wages. Bliss threatened her, Peter said. Nathaniel confronted Bliss, wiry with a scarred lip, at the docks. Margaret lied, Bliss said. His log cleared him. But Nathaniel saw sand on his boots. The city locked ships. The Gazette warned of a compass killer. Nathaniel showed the note to Goody Esther, 60, a tavern keeper. From a 1685 wreck, the Black Sloop, she said. Jonas's father, Margaret's uncle, Bliss's brother profited from betrayal. Simon swore revenge, Esther said. He's gone. August 17th, Samuel Bliss, 34, Edward's brother, a sailor, was found on the Starling, drowned, note pinned. Samuel crewed the Black Sloop. His wife Anne said he saw a stranger. He carried a rope, she said. Nathaniel found a bloodied cord in the hold. He questioned Edward, who paled. I saw no one, he said. Charleston teetered. Lejeau preached of God's wrath, but Nathaniel saw betrayal. He staked out the docks, pistol primed, rain falling. August 22nd, tracks led to a derelict sloop. A lantern glowed with ropes. Compasses, a list. Pike, Cole, Bliss, Archdale. A scarred figure moved. Simon, Nathaniel said. Simon's dead, he said. I'm Paul, Paul Reed, 30, survived, a smuggler. Your city betrayed us, he said, rope gleaming. Pike, Cole, Bliss stole our gold. Paul's compasses marked his oath. Archdale was next. Nathaniel drew his pistol. No more. Paul lunged. Nathaniel fired. Paul fell. Nathaniel found Archdale, confessing his role in the wreck. Paul's list named Nathaniel for guarding it. Nathaniel burned it. Charleston blamed pirates. Paul's body sank in the river. Nathaniel stayed watchman, but the docks whispered. Sailors heard waves crash where the compass broke. Providence, Rhode Island, October 1715. Rain soaked the settlement. Its log houses pressed against the Seekonk River's muddy banks. Forests whispered of Narragansett raids and settler greed. The colony, founded by dissenters, was tense with land disputes. In that crisp autumn, a killer struck, hanging victims with bells that told a hollowed vow. Amos alle 34 Constable bore scars from a 1700 militia skirmish. His wife's death in 10 left him with a son, John, 9, and a faltering faith. On October 5th, Goodman Samuel Pratt burst in. Lydia's dead, he said, in the woods. Amos grabbed his musket and followed through the fog. Lydia Pratt, 27, Samuel's sister, hung from an oak, a bell etched with a hollowed circle tied to her wrist. A note read, "The bell tolls." Amos's breath caught. Lydia was pious, a weaver. Coroner Thomas Oney, 50, ruled strangulation. The bell deliberate. "It's Narragansett," he said. Providence stirred with dread. Lydia was buried. Reverend James Allen, 45, praying. Governor Samuel Cranston, 56, demanded answers. "Savages," he said. Amos doubted it. The note was personal. Samuel said. Lydia argued with widow Ruth Cole, 40, over a stolen loom. "She cursed us," Samuel said. Amos visited Ruth, her hut herb-scented. "I wished no harm," Ruth said. Her alibi held. October 10th, Edward Marsh, 39, a tanner, was found near the river, hanged, bell tied. Note reading the bell tolls. His wife, Mary, said he quarreled with Thomas Black, a merchant, over a debt. Black threatened him. She wept. Amos confronted Black, stout, with a silver chain, at his shop. Marsh lied, Black said. His ledger cleared him, but Amos saw mud on his boots. The town barred doors. Militia patrolled, fearing raids. Amos showed the note to Goody Hannah, 55, a healer. From a 1700 land deal, she said. Settlers stole Narragansett land. Lydia's father, Edward's uncle, Black's brother, profited. A boy, Thames, swore revenge. Hannah said, "He's gone." October 16th, Abigail Black, 31, Thomas's sister, a seamstress, was found in a meadow, hanged bell and note. She worked for the deal's overseer. Her husband, John, said she saw a stranger. He carried a rope, John said. Amos found a bell knife in the grass. He questioned Thomas, who paled. "I saw no one," he said. Providence teetered. Allen preached of God's wrath, but Amos saw greed. He staked out the woods, pistol primed, rain falling. October 21st, tracks led to a cave. A fire glowed, with ropes, bells, a list, Pratt, Marsh, Black, Cranston. A scarred figure moved. "Thames," Amos said. "Thames is dead," he said. "I'm Seth." Seth, Narragansett, 28, survived, a trapper. "Your town stole our land," he said, rope gleaming. Pratt, Marsh, Black profited. Seth's bells marked his oath. Cranston was next. Amos drew his pistol. No more. Seth lunged. Amos fired. Seth fell. Amos found Cranston, confessing his role in the theft. Seth's list named Amos for militia duty. Amos burned it. Providence blamed raiders. Seth's body sank in the river. Amos stayed constable, but the woods whispered. Settlers heard bells toll where the hollowed vow rang.